Greetings, greetings, greetings. It is I, your king, King Clifford Jefferson, ascendant of Godfrey, the fifth count of Andrew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I'm the reincarnation of King Edward the Peaceful, which we know as Jesus Christ. I have by my side Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont. As always, come to assist you with these marvelous lessons that we are called to give you. On behalf of my queen, we love you all, and we just hope that you all are paying attention to these marvelous lessons. As always, I give Archbishop Belmont a couple of words to say. So with that, I digress, and we can get on with this marvelous lesson.
We apologize for the technical difficulties, but once again, greetings, brothers and sisters within the Kingdom of England, Empire of Albion. It is I, Archbishop Belmont, from the illustrious noble house of Belmont. Today is August 13th, 2023, which is the Gregorian calendar, equivalent to the 2973 Berber calendar. And like we say here at the Third Temple English Church of England, it is always a beautiful time to be alive. I want to give honors to our king, King Clifford Jefferson from the Royal House of Plantagenet, as well as Queen Godwinson from the House of Godwinson, for them keeping up the duties and obligations of what it is to be a king and a queen, to help save our long lost heirs within the diaspora that we call America, which is nothing more than the British American colonies. It's beautiful that, many of you have now been finding your way to this path because you've been understanding and comprehending what it is that the king has brought for the heirs. It's not many who's going to heed the warning or the lessons, and we understand, that's part of the whole equation. But as time goes on, you will see that what it is that we have been ordained to bring is sound and right and exact. As heirs, it is part of our blood for us to be able to come out here and do what it is that we're supposed to be doing. For our ancestors, they left it all into a trust, which we are the operating trust, the bodies, the heirs. So we do not be a reflection of what it is that they left and established, then you receive nothing. So with that being said, I digress and I leave the rest of the introduction to our king. Peace and love.
Well said, Archbishop. And I just want to say a couple of words about what Archbishop just said about the trust. We are the beneficiaries as well as the trustees of the trust that we leave for our heirs, because the same estates that were left in the trust for us as beneficiaries was left by our ancestors in the past, which still exists today. And it's very important because we think about, the monopolies that were created to steal the estate on behalf of those who are acting as trustees on behalf of the trust. And it's a shame that we allow them to be able to dispensate the assets from the trust when we dead and gone. How we know if that obligation is actually be fulfilled? So we really need to think about that and have a or a counter reason for that, because a lot of our children need the assistance now, So that particular trust that you so-called claim to leave in an estate once you leave this earth is not wise thinking, because your children need it now, So these lessons are to teach you about the trust and the origin of where the trust comes from as beneficiary to the ancestral way. So, I know there's a lot of information out there today that is being taught by the so-called alert ones and historians and geologists, ethnologists, all those who claim to give you sound reasoning for the things that we do. And I'm here to prove them wrong. I'm concerned about the state of my people. And it only comes to understanding your history, because history is somewhat told to us about who we are, but that's not who we are. So for once and for all, me and Archbishop comes to remove the cloudy consciousness about those concepts and give you a concrete, clear understanding about the origin of where we come from the concept of what we call time immemorial, because you call it the past, some call it ancient history, some call it whatever they want to call it. But those times are out of mind. There's no recorded history to validate that. And we need primary sources to validate that which we claim to be. So without further ado, let's get started with this marvelous lesson. This is going to be part, I think it's part four of the Monopoly, Monopoly Crown and Crown Gold, part 4. And this is going to be reference to that was talked about in the previous lectures, all involving slavery, Crown Gold, French slavery, the colonists, the origin of the Articles of Confederation. All that's going to be summed up in this one lesson. So all those who got their thinking caps on, please, 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 don't take these words in vain, because they were given to you for the fulfillment of the prophecy, because you are the prophecy. So without further ado, let's get started. Any other words you want to say, Archbishop, before we get started?
Pretty much to sum up what or come back what the king has said, you know, don't take these words lightly, because we come for a select few people. And when I mean that select few people, which is those heirs from the Kingdom of England, descendants of Great Britain. This message is for you mostly. You know, many people are here in the diaspora of the so-called United States, many different nationalities, and that's fine. You know, they have contracts with them. But we're here specifically for those of you who have English ancestry or ancestry that goes back to Great Britain, who can be verified through your surname, which is an inheritance, a title. And for only way for you to be able to come back and to get what your ancestors have left for you, you have to be able to know your history through your law. And like King said, time immemorial starts at the year 1189. So any of that information that comes before that, you're really much just wasting space within your consciousness, because no court of law are going to listen to it. So with that being said, follow along, and we love you, and I digress.
Well said, Archbishop. Just going to get a concept of time immemorial again for all those who don't know it, because it's very, very, very important. So it's very, 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 very important to understand concept of time immemorial in reference to law. Law. It's going to get a concept of time immemorial again. For all those who don't know it, it's very, very, very important. Okay, I think that's all the problem. Apologize for that. Everybody needs to get a good concept of time immemorial. The abstract, which is concerned with what we call uses and customs of the traditions that we create to be called law. But it's not sound because it's not recorded as law in regards to the uses and the customs of the traditions that's in usage. All right. So an abstract understanding, and pretty much everyone's understanding about our ancient history and culture come from this definition. Read the first definition from Archbishop.
Says time immemorial is a phrase meaning time extending beyond the reach of memory, record, or tradition, and definitely ancient beyond memory or record. The phrase is used in legally significant context as well as in common parlance.
So everyone who's are in some type of association, some type of affiliation, some type of group that you're learning from, and the concepts that you're learning and the concepts that you're using as a result of you identifying with the concept that you're using. Everyone needs to ask their question about the origin of that usage before it was recorded, which we call time immemorial, which concerns memory, record, tradition, which is considered to be indefinitely ancient. All right? Everyone needs to understand that. I'm pretty sure everybody got that type of understanding from what they learned from their so-called historians. But where's the legal effect? That's the question you need to be asking yourself. How does it help you in your present affiliation with the administration, which you call government, which is on the local level? You ain't even got to the federal level or what they assume to be the international level. We're talking about your local level. What's your affiliation with the uses and the customs of the traditions that your forefathers have for you, that you so-called say you follow, no matter what it is, from any nationality, any culture, any tradition? Where is the legal protection, the liberties, the rights that government is supposed to protect under the constitutions that were recorded in lieu of that common law that was in usage from time immemorial? Where is the legal effect? So this is the definition of time immemorial and its legal understanding.
In law, time immemorial denotes a period of time beyond which legal memory cannot go, and time out of mind. Most frequently, the phrase time immemorial appears as a legal term of art in judicial discussion of common law development, and in the United States, the property rights of Native Americans.
Listen very closely to the language that's being said. They automatically related Native Americans, not Indians, Native Americans, to the concept of time immemorial that's reserved by the depositors of case law that's filed in the depositories, which we call courts of law, and reference to what we call time immemorial, associated with property rights. Most of us just read over that. Associated with any other continent, any other country associated with the concept of time immemorial. We're not concerned with any other country, any other nations concerned with the concept of time immemorial, because most of those concepts are not recorded in history according to some type of record that has some legal sanction. All right? We're not out here just talking on the street. We're talking about something that has some type of effect in law. All right? That has some type of security and interest in some said property. And we know we deal with Native Americans, you ain't talking about, we're talking about land, basically. We're talking about land, the right to be on the land, because every other resource comes from the land. Y'all need to understand that. So anything that you call the United States of America or the adjoining islands, we're not talking about Europe, we're not talking about Asia, we're not talking about France, we're not talking about Europe. We are talking about the people who come from those territories, but we're not talking about the land. We're talking about land here because those same type of territories with the uses and customs of those people are over here. Y'all need to understand that. If you're not understanding that, or you're not being taught this, you need to go to your leaders and ask them to explain this. Because if you don't, it's going to be detrimental to your future succession. Understand that. So for what's just been said to you in regards to having an abstract understanding, a concrete understanding, and a concrete understanding is being able to bring a claim in the courts of law in regards to the uses and customs that you're so-called portraying to be today. You have to use it according to what they have deposited as depositors of case law. Statutes, stuff that's already ruled on. All right, if your leaders and your pastors and your governors and your senators and your judiciary and your executive departments is not talking about this, then you are in a real serious problem, because they all know that the origin of the uses of law that they so-called practice comes from English common law, now called American common law, which is known as English and American common law. Read that for him, Archbishop.
Time immemorial is frequently used to describe the time required for a custom to mature into common law. Medieval historian Richard Barber describes this as the watershed between a primarily oral culture and a world where writing was paramount. Common law is a body of law identified by judges in judicial proceedings, rather than created by the legislator.
Stop. Read that paragraph again. Medieval historian.
It says medieval historian Richard Barber describes this as the watershed between a primarily oral culture in a world where writing was paramount. Common law is a body of law identified by judges in judicial proceedings, rather than created by the legislator. Judges determine the common law by pinpointing the legal principles consistently reiterated in the previous legal cases over a long period of time.
Stop. Okay. If anybody understands the origin of the judiciary in North America, it comes from the creation of their administrative government that was created in 1789 by way of their constitution, which was the creation of an executive department and a judiciary department. All right. Prior to that, there was no executive judicial department, because the only government that was existing at that particular time was the legislative department. And the legislative department was made up of the judges called the King's Bench.
Mhm.
All right. They were the depositors of the case law that they have put in their depositories. All right, their courts of records from legal memory of time immemorial. All right, as recorded by Richard Barber from the medieval historian. All right, and in the medieval, that goes back to what we call the Middle Ages. You got the Dark Ages, you got the pre-Middle Ages, you got the Middle Ages, and you got the late Middle Ages. All right, which we'll get some type of sound understanding on that in a second. But it says in the next paragraph about the origin of the common law and the origin of where it comes from based off the uses and customs that were there at the time the people were there. All right, read it, Archbishop.
It says, in English law, time immemorial ends and legal memory begins at 1189. The end of the reign of King Henry II, who was associated with the invention of the English common law, because common law is found to have a non-historical immemorial advent. It is distinct from laws created by monarchs or legislative bodies on a fixed date. In English law, time immemorial has also been used to specify the time required to establish a prescriptive right. The Prescription Act 1832, which noted that the full expression was time immemorial, or time whereof the memory of man runneth not to the contrary, replace the burden of proving time immemorial for the enjoyment of particular land rights with statutory fixed time periods of up to 60 years.
Okay, so we're dealing with property rights, dealing with land rights. And a land right is dealing with parcels of land. They ain't dealing with the whole land, because the whole land belongs to the king. All right, they're dealing with parcel estates, which has a bundle of rights. This is called real estate law. All right, under this prescription, how long you can hold that, have a claim on the property for it remains. The highest form of ownership in North America is called fee and simple, or what you call what's called fee and simple, life estates, and there's another one that sits by mine. But those are by way of prescription. But prescription can also be subject to what we call reverse or adverse possession, as a result of a claim that's more solidified than the previous person who have a claim in ownership. And let's get a rough definition of prescription there real quick before I move on. Read that for me, Bishop.
The Prescription Act of 1832 is an act of Parliament of the United Kingdom concerning English land law, and particularly the method for acquiring an easement. It was passed on August 1st, 1832.
Okay, very simple. Easement is the use of somebody else's property.
Mhm.
That's what easement is. They call it, they got one called prescription by sovereignty of land, or what they call adverse possession, which is also an easement as defined here. Let's just define easement before I move on. Read the first paragraph.
An easement is a non-possessory right to use and or to enter into the real property of another without possessing it. It is best typified in the right of way which one landowner, A, may enjoy over the land of another, B. An easement is a property right and a type of incorporeal property in itself at the common law in most jurisdictions.
Okay, that's fine. So an easement is a non-possessory right, meaning that you don't have the right to actually own it. Ownership is possession. When you say possession, you're saying ownership. Nobody has proved ownership of the right of possession, because the word possession means property. And when you got a possession or property, that means the question becomes who owns it. Because if you don't own it, that means you're using it. That means which means non-possessory right and the use or the enter into real property. And the total right to use a property comes by what we call eminent domain, and that power lies in the state or the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all need to understand this. Let me go back. All right. So the origin of the common law, as we said, in regards to time immemorial, in regards to the United States, in regards to property rights concerning Native Americans, as we just read in the abstract, and then we just read in the concrete, that the true origin of it comes from Henry II. So there's a gap there between the Native Americans and Henry II. Henry II is of the Plantagenet crown, and the Native Americans were those who were subject to the colonized settlers who came here to North America when it was already inhabited by Native Americans. Did I say that right, Archbishop?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all need to understand that, because before the colonists got here, the only people here were Native Americans, and Native Americans was here before the 13 British colonies, who then called themselves the United States of America under the Articles of Confederation. It was not an administrative government at that particular time. It was an ideological government. It was an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all need to understand the jurisdictions that were already here prior to the 13 colonies was the Dutch, the French, and the Spanish. And the Spanish and the French precedes them both by way of the Treaty of Paris. I said this in the last previous, but as I said, this is going to be a synopsis of what we talked about in the first and second and third lecture on Monopoly. This is the fourth one. So the British possessions, known as Great Britain, through the Treaty of Union of 1707, let me just say that again. The 13 confederations, or the 13 colonies now called states, possessions came by way of the Treaty of Paris of 1783 with King George III. King George III, King George II, King George I got their authority from Queen Anne. At that time, it was under the authority of what we call the Crown. It's called the New Jersey Provincial Council. Let's just revisit that. This is what should be taught to y'all. I like that. Good. Can I see that, Archbishop?
Yep, the New Jersey Provincial Council, yes.
Read that form.
The New Jersey Provincial Council was the upper house of the New Jersey legislature under colonial rule until it was replaced by the New Jersey Legislative Council under the New Jersey Constitution of 1776.
Stop. So the New Jersey Constitution of 1776, July 4th, came from the Declaration of Independence on July 2nd, 1776. All right. The United States government, the 13 colonies, is not even in existence at that particular time. Under the New Jersey Provincial Council. New Jersey Provincial Council got its start in 1702. Why? Because the history said so. This is the record. First of all, let's go here. Remind me to come back to Archbishop real quick. I just got to touch on this. Recorded history. Read that first paragraph right there. Right here.
According to John Tosh, from the High Middle Ages, 1000 to 1300 onwards, the written word survives in greater abundance than any other source for Western history. Western historians developed methods comparable to modern historiographic research in the 17th and 18th centuries, especially in France and Germany, where they began investigating these source materials to write histories of their past.
Stop. Okay. Very clear and upfront. The French and German historians wrote the past history of the history that we call it from France and Germany to understand that what we call time immemorial. The concept of time immemorial started in France. Time immemorial, because Anjou was under the authority of the Plantagenets of Count Henry II, whose father was Godfrey V, Count of Anjou, who was from France. Y'all need to realize that that gap is closing. It's closing. Why? Because we have primary sources. We got primary sources. And we validate from Wikipedia, but we show you primary sources. What is a primary source? Right there, read the interpretations.
The interpretation of recorded history often relies on historical method or the set of techniques and guidelines by which historians use primary sources and other evidence to research and then to write accounts of the past. The question of the nature and even the possibility of an effective method for interpreting recorded history is raised in the philosophy of history as the question of epistemology. The study of different historical methods is known as historiography, which focuses on examining how different interpreters of recorded history create different interpretations of historical evidence.
There y'all have it. So we always say, he who writes your books sets your timeline. He who writes your books sets your timeline, because these are who you call your historians. All right? These people lived in the time you were born, so they can't be an historian. The historians that who wrote the record before the record was even written based off their observation are dead and gone. So we don't know what they said is even true or not. We know the present ones ain't true because they were born in your history. And if they don't have a teacher to teach them the past, then they know that their present understanding is flawed. So where is our validated proof? We just said that the concept of time immemorial go back to Henry II, the son of Godfrey V, Count of Anjou. The word Jefferson is Godfrey because the name is originated, pronounced in English as Jeffrey, but in the origin of where it comes from, which is France, is Jeffrey, spelled with Geoffrey. All right, that's a proven fact. All right, and we know that the French had a jurisdiction, the territory over here that encompassed Spanish territory, which I'm gonna prove to you in a second. And all that territory that France and Spain had was ceded to Great Britain in 1763 through the Treaty of Paris, which we'll discuss in a second. And it's confirmed by the Proclamation of 1763 by King George III, which we'll confirm in a second. And the Treaty of Paris was ruled by what we call the House of Bourbons, which is the cadet branch of the Capetan dynasty, which was warned with the Plantagenet in the crown, which Henry II descended down from, because his father, Godfrey V, Count of Anjou, created it. How I know this, y'all? Who else knows it this good? I don't see no comments. I don't see no rebuttals. I don't see no counter arguments to what I'm saying. But yet I don't see no type of humbleness to the lessons. Everyone should humble themselves, not to me, but to the lessons of the past, because that's where you come from, based off the historical methods that everyone used to validate the history that goes back to time immemorial, that the court will recognize. That's the whole important fact. Let me just prove this.
That's why, once again, while we keep saying your history, where who you come from, is important. And the best way for you to get an understanding of that is doing your lineal descent and going back as far as possible. And once you come to the point in the understanding that you are who we're telling you you are, it's just now put yourself in a proper state of mind and condition yourself to live that life and those customs that you forgot about that actually still exist at this waking moment.
Well said, Archbishop. See, we know that we have some type of legal effect in our argument in lieu of this claim. I'm just showing you for the record. Can this be seen, Archbishop?
Yes, it can be seen.
Jefferson versus the United States federal government. United States Department of United States federal government, United States Federal Reserve System, United States Department of Treasury. This case was filed this year as a result of what I'm teaching. As a result of what I'm teaching. See, it has a legal effect to what I'm teaching. No one who teaches has a legal effect that you could bring a claim, because the commodity, i.e. the gold and silver, is controlled by the United States federal government, the Federal Reserve System, as well as the Department of Treasury, which no one had access to because the Federal Reserve notes that you have in your pocket are not redeemable for the species that they were, that full faith and credit was promised on. Of what we call wildcat banking, which was created of the medium of exchange called paper currency, which has a maturity date. It has a maturity date. It's called 90-day paper. People don't understand that. That was created as a result of the monopolies known as your banking monopolies. In France, it was called the Mississippi bubble, Mississippi Company. After that, you had the United States create theirs, called the First Bank of America, created by Robert Morrison. Then the second bank of the First Bank of the United States, then the second Bank of the United States, then your Federal Reserve System in 1917. All these do not have a sound, what they call CBCG, central banking currency digital system, as a result of it being backed by gold and silver, because all that was taken out of circulation, as a result of what we call trade monopolies, violation of antitrust law. I taught this in Monopoly 1 and 2, and I talked about it in 3. Now I'm talking about it again in 4. This is against the Department of Treasury. Bank of America, same thing. Same rules apply. Article 6, all engaged in contracting before the creation of the United States Constitution as an article of federation are still valid. I'm not doing this just for me. I'm doing it for you.
And all you have to do is just come back into your proper state of mind of being your true self. It's not going to be given to anyone else who wasn't what? Heirs. It's only given to heirs. And for you to be an heir, you have to be who your forefathers were, without a shadow of a doubt or contradiction.
This case is against the state of New Jersey, as a result of them not changing the name to a lowercase name associated with the Third Temple English Church of England to show my affiliation with the English Third Temple Church, which is our polity. He didn't want to change his name as a result of the gate and contest created under the all caps name, when they're supposed to be the same person. The all caps and the lower caps is supposed to be the same person according to identity. But we know there's a difference, because one represents a straw man, called a legal person, and the other one represents a natural person called a human being. So for that reason, I did a name change as Archbishop, which went through. He got his name changed from all caps to lowercase to show its affiliation to the English Third Temple Church. Why? Because he's an Archbishop of the English Third Temple Church. That's evidence that we're using in this case to show that the state is discriminating as a result of me being late, because remember, corporations are citizens as well. So if my Archbishop can be recognized as a citizen affiliated with the Third Temple Church of England through incorporation, then I know the king can, which I represent. So that's a case against there. This is a case right here. It was only dismissed as a result of removing it, as a result of whatever the case was. I removed the case, but the case dismissed without prejudice because it was a notice of removal, and that can only be done by defendants. So the case dismissed it, the judge dismissed it, allowed me to refile the complaint as a violation of, as we said, federal questioning. So the case is still pending now. This one against the state of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, the Secretary Attorney. I'm suing everybody. This is all brand new cases by the king. And this is one for our temple, the LBH homes. Beautiful property. These are all valid cases done on behalf of your king, Archbishop, the English Third Temple Church, for your salvation. Who else is doing that? No one, because no one can bring a claim. Why? Let's show you why. I already talked about this in 3.
Point of interest, that's the reason why it's important to know your true allegiance. And for you brothers and sisters who are going to, you know, start understanding your English history, you know, there was what we call the interregnum that took place via Alistair Cromwell, because these they didn't want to be underneath the monarchy, which is, like I said, a violation. So you can't claim yourself to be English and don't bring yourself back underneath the monarchy, because that's technically what's going on right now within the United States, is the interregnum, because the king, you know, hasn't returned at that time until now.
We're going to prove it to you. Read the history of the Jersey Provincial Council.
The Provincial Council was established in 1702 upon the surrender by the proprietors of East Jersey and those of West Jersey of the right of government to Queen Anne. Anne's government united the 2 colonies as the province of New Jersey, a royal colony, establishing a new system of government. The instructions from Queen Anne to Viscount Cornbury, the first royal governor of New Jersey, outlined a fusion of power system, which allowed for overlap of executive, legislative, and judicial authority. It provided for a bicameral legislature consisting of a council and general assembly.
Now, so that means that the executive department and the judicial department, judicial authority never existed because it was overlapping. There was a fusion of government, and the highest form of the government is the legislature. It's not the executive department, it's not the judiciary, it's the legislative department, and that continued until the incarceration of William Franklin, as we're going to read here. These are facts, y'all.
On December 6, 1775, Governor William Franklin, who's the son of Benjamin Franklin, prorogued the New Jersey legislature until January 3rd, 1776, but they never met again. On May 30th, 1776, Franklin attempted to convene the legislature, but was met instead with an order by the New Jersey Provincial Congress for his arrest. On July 2nd, 1776, the Provincial Congress approved the new constitution, and on August 13th, a new legislature was elected, with the appointed Provincial Council being succeeded by the elected New Jersey Legislative Council.
All right, y'all better listen. From 1702 to 1776, the crown was in authority. Everybody see that? The crown was in authority. Its meeting place in the crown was Perth Amboy, and the alternative was Burlington. I'm in Perth Amboy right now. The crown was in the interregnum, as Archbishop said, as a result of what we call the English Civil War, which is called the War of the Three Roses, between the English government, the part of England, Ireland, and Scotland. It's called the War of the Three Kingdoms. I need to know your history. The War of the Three Kingdoms between England, Ireland, and Scotland. The British monarchs under King James to Queen Anne to King George III were not English kings. They're all descended from either German, Irish, or Scottish houses. You need to understand that, because England was under the control of France and England through Godfrey V Caravan Jew. Godfrey V Caravan Jew married Empress Matilda, the daughter of Margaret of Scotland, who's the daughter of Margaret of Scotland, and she married Henry I, the son of William the Conqueror, who invaded Normandy. These are facts. All right, so from 1702, those who had authority under what they call the proprietaries under George Carteret and John Berkeley or Edward Belling were proprietaries who surrendered their charges back to the crown in 1702. These are facts. So all that was given under the British crown, under the British government, was surrendered back to the crown. The crown is not the British government, and the minds of the still the British government. The crown is a separate entity, which controls all the property, because the crown and the property that belongs to the crown is what we call entail. It's called crown land. I taught about this in previous lessons. If you're hearing these words, you need to look them up. Crown land, entail, corporation sold. Corporation sold. It's synonymous. All right. So it says that East Jersey and West Jersey, under the perpetuity governments, were surrendered back to Queen Anne. Queen Anne came to rule in 1714. So all the so-called contracts made prior to her, which under what we call the succeeding monarchs before her, was who? William the First, William Orange, whoever that was, and Charles II and Charles I. Charles II is the descendant of Charles I, who was married to Henrietta Marie of France. She was from a House of Bourbon, a cadet branch from the Capeton dynasty. All right. Those charges given out by Charles II, Charles I to Charles II, and those charges that were given from Duke of York from Charles II were surrendered back to the crown, as we just said in 1702. Now, why do I say that? Because we just said East Jersey and West Jersey. East Jersey, real quick, has the same language as we said under the province of New Jersey. The province of East Jersey, along with the province of West Jersey, between 1764 and 1702, in accordance with the Quinton Party deed, were two distinct political divisions of the province of New Jersey, which became the United States of New Jersey. The two provinces were amalgamated in 1702. East Jersey capital was located in Perth Amboy. Determination of the exact location for the border between West Jersey and East Jersey was often a matter of dispute. It's still a matter of dispute because all the territory of East Jersey and West Jersey belong to the crown. Now it's no longer under the crown as a result of what happened to William Franklin, the son of Benjamin Franklin. This takes you back to the Articles of Confederation. So let's go there. What's the time limit, Archbishop?
It's 11:30, so I guess we got time because it's live.
All right, let's go. Read this.
The Articles of Confederation and the Perpetual Union was an agreement among the 13 states of the United States, formerly the 13 colonies, that served as the nation's first frame of government. It was debated by the Second Continental Congress at Independence Hall in Philadelphia between July 1776 and November 1777, and finalized by the Congress on November 15, 1777.
Stop. Okay, so the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union was an ideological government that was an itinerant government because it was moving. They were in a state of war, so it was moving all the time. They were in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania was given a charter by Charles II. It was a charter of West Jersey, which was actually under the authority of Edward Begley. And they were all Quakers. As I talked about in Monopoly Part 3, that the Quaker Society originated from the Lancaster Quakers, which were responsible for what we call the transatlantic slave trade back in Liverpool. You have a Liverpool, Pennsylvania, you have a York, Pennsylvania, and you have a Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Where do they get these names from? Where did they get the name from? Because William Penn, as a Quaker, descended from the creator of what we call the Quaker Society, which was George Fox and Margaret Fell. Margaret Fell was married to also Thomas Fell, who was the Duchess of Lancaster. The Duchess of Lancaster was an office created by Edward III as a Plantagenet in the crown. Going back to what we call time immemorial, back to our ancestors' house. Mm-hmm. We were warned against ourselves through the War of the Roses, the Yorks and the Lancasters. So as a result of that, they infiltrated as a result of us warned against ourselves and start getting these families. I'm going to show you better than I can tell you. I'm going to show you. All right. Continue to read.
Yes.
It came into force.
A guiding principle. It came into force on March 1st, 1781, after being ratified by all 13 colonial states. A guiding principle of the Articles was the establishment and preservation of the independence and sovereignty of the states. The Articles consciously established a weak central government, affording it only those powers the former colonies had recognized as belonging to king and parliament. The document provided clearly written rules for how the States League of Friendship, known as the Perpetual Union, would be organized.
Okay, so it's a weak central government. The weak central government is a government that's not that's subject to a unitary state, which is a sovereign state. Because under the Confederacy, it was subject to a sovereign state. Because remember, Queen Anne government was a fusion of government under the Articles of Confederation. Their Articles of Confederation was ideological. It was an administrative government because at that time it was under Parliament, as established as they just stated. Former colonies had recognized as belonging to the King and Parliament. That was the only thing recognized at a particular time. And Parliament represents the crown. De facto king sitting on the crown, but it still nonetheless represents the crown. All right. And that treaty represented a perpetual union that could not be broken. All the sovereignty of the states, all the engagements made with the states could not be broken. And as we said, the United States didn't come to existence until 1789. Their Constitution wasn't created until 1787. All right. But you had the crown operating from 1702 to 1776. Y'all need to pay attention. Let's go to the articles. Let's validate that by Article 6. This is Article 6 of the United States Constitution, created in 1789. Read what it says.
Article 6 of the United States Constitution establishes the laws and treaties of the United States made in accordance with it as the supreme law of the land, forbids a religious test as a requirement for holding a governmental position, and holds the United States under the Constitution responsible for debts incurred by the United States under the Articles of Confederation.
Okay, the Articles of Confederation was now finalized until 1781. The first draft created July 12, 1776, 9 days before that, after the Declaration of Independence. Y'all better listen. 9 days after the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation went into its first draft and was the conclusion of 1781. The Bank of America was created in 1781 by who? Roger Morris. Roger Morris was a slave trader. Black people were commodities. He created the first Bank of America, who funded the Bank of America, who funded the United States in the Revolutionary War, along with Benjamin Franklin, who had his son locked up.
Mm-hmm.
His loyal friends had his son locked up for representing the crown, which was an authority at that particular time. All right. Now that's just a brief of what the Article 6 said. Read what the full article says.
It says all debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. This Constitution and the laws of the United States shall be made in the pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding.
Okay, so we just read in the first section of this article says that all debts engaged in contract before are still valid under the Articles of Confederation. We just read under the Articles of Confederation that the only power that they got for the central weak government was that as declared under the King and Parliament. Mm-hmm. And they mentioned here the King and Parliament. That's like, you know, that King and Parliament is still running things. Their administration government is not functioning right now as a result of what they call what's that term? Co-op. What's that term they say? Coup d'etat. Coup d'etat. A coup d'etat has been going on. All right. So all the articles under the Articles of Confederation, which was a weak central government, it was confederation. It was not sovereign state. It will never be a sovereign state because they don't have the authority to have a sovereign state. I'm gonna prove it to you. All right, read the next paragraph.
Says the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislators and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States.
public trust, public office, some tenure. It's an office that I hold. No religious justice is required because as a result of the separation of church and state by the United States in 1789 when they created the United States. Prior to that, there was a fusion of government because the only thing that was there was a state church. State church, they had a religious test. You could not be a Roman Catholic or a Protestant that practiced the faith of Catholicism, Roman Catholicism, and you had to take the Lord's Supper. They call it Eucharist or communion. You're in communion right now, y'all. You're in communion right now. This is the Lord's Supper. This is the Lord's bread. We're not talking about physical bread. We're talking about that bread that's going to make you grow. That spiritual water is going to give you insight. That's what we're talking about. All right. This is what's been kept secret from you for so many times, many ages, so many times that came before you. And it's written about. I didn't come to change the law. I come to fulfill it. Fulfilling the prophecy. Jesus was the King of Peace. He was the king. He was an elder. Y'all need to understand this. So as a result of that, all contracts created under the Articles of Confederation, and the Articles of Confederation is the result from the United States declaring their independence from Great Britain. So that means they were at war with the British Crown. Not England, because they wanted the rights as English men and women. They was at war with the monarch sitting on the English crown. And the English crown was united with the Irish and Scottish crown in 1707. That's preceded by the English, the Act of Settlement, which was created by the House of Tudors under Elizabeth II, Elizabeth I, daughter of Henry VII from the House of Tudors, which descended from the House of Lancaster, which we'll get into in a second, because that's what the slave trade started from, the House of Lancaster. I cut that branch from Edward III, who created the House of Lancaster through John Gaunt. John Gaunt's sons, Edward Henry IV, Henry V, Henry VI, were all other plantains in the crown. Every one of them. Let's get into it. Let's get into these contracts that were engaged. Treaty of Alliance. Because we had the Treaty of Paris of 1783, when King George III succeeded all the territory that they gained by the Treaty of Paris of 1763. I talked about this in part 3. I'm going over it again so you can all understand it. I actually broke down the French crest, the French family crest, and the Franco family crest. French and France is synonymous. Franco is not. Franco is derived from Italian and Spain descendancy or monarchism. All right, let's just get a rough draft. Read it for Archbishop. Hold on one second.
Go to the top.
Go ahead.
The Treaty of Alliance, also known as the Franco-American Treaty, was a defensive alliance between the Kingdom of France and the United States, formed amid the American Revolutionary War with Great Britain.
Stop. Okay. So it says Franco-American Treaty. That's what they call it. It said French Treaty of Alliance, but then they qualified it by saying the Franco-American Alliance. So let's look at the word Franco real quick. If I saved it, I think I might have erased it. No, I saved it. All those, oh, they're the same. They're not the same. Franco, history, Italy and Spain. So that means the Spanish Roman Catholics. All right. Now we're not talking about over in the other continent. We're talking about here and their affiliations here in North America. Because we know Spain and France inhabited colonized the Northern Hemisphere, what we call North America. They didn't colonize nothing. They were already here. Not the Franco. They colonized. The French people were already here. These are the ones who encompass the territory known as what we call New Louisiana, or what we call New France, New Spain, New France. I'll prove it to you in a second. All right. All right, we go further. That's it. What I want here. Treaty of Alliance. Let's go back here. Continue to read Treaty of Alliance.
It was signed by delegates of King Louis XVI and the Second Continental Congress in Paris on February 6, 1778, along with the Treaty of Amity and Commerce and a secret clause providing for the entry of other European allies. Together, these instruments are sometimes known as the Franco-American Alliance or the Treaties of Alliance. The agreements mark the official entry of the United States on the world stage and formalized French recognition in support of U.S. independence that was to be decisive in America's victory.
Stop. Okay, so France recognized so-called the fleeting nation or the fledgling nation called the Confederacy as on the world stage. France, not British, not the British Crown. They were one with the British Crown. And before the British Crown, they were one with England, or supposed to be one with England. The true inhabitants of North America was one with England. It was only the colonists that had a problem with England. Why? Because they were not English descendants. The House of Stuart knew that. The House of Tudors knew that. Apparently the colonists did not know that. And I'm gonna qualify for you in a second. Because how could you have these names and not have this, know this history? I'm gonna say that again. How could you have these names and not know these history? Because the history was built off these names.
Yep.
It wasn't built off Indian names. It wasn't built off Moorish names. It wasn't built off French names. It wasn't built off British names. It wasn't built off Dutch names or any other name. If those names were built off it, they were called new names. And if you call it something new, it can't be the same name that was existing prior to you call it something new, because it's not new. It just put new in front of it, but it's still the same name. I'm gonna prove it to you in a second. All right. So Louis XVI is very paramount because we see here in 1778 they got the Treaty of Alliance that recognized the United States as a sovereign nation before British even did it. All right. So that means that under the Treaty of Alliance, which they were at that time under the Articles of Confederation, the treaties that were made under Article 6, the engagement contract created at that time, were still effective. So you must go back to this treaty. The Treaty of Alliance, which was with France. It was not with Britain because they were war with Britain at that time. This is why France said Americans are traitors as a result of you breaking this treaty. So that's one thing they got to answer for. So everything that King George did is null and void. Everything that was made from Queen Anne on up is null and void. Let me prove it to you by way of primary source. A primary source. I showed you this yesterday. Apparently y'all haven't gotten it. Read that again.
New Jersey 46:3-1, feudal tenure is abolished. The feudal tenure estates and the incidents thereof taken away, discharged, and abolished from and after March 12th, 1664 by Section 2 of an act entitled An Act Concerning Tenures passed February 18th, 1795, shall so continue to be taken away, discharged, and abolished. And no such estate or any incident thereof shall at any time be created in any manner whatsoever.
So no estate that's in regards to feudal tenure or feudal holding is disqualified, discharged, abolished. All right, this is March 12th, 1664. This is when Charles II gave a charter to Duke of York, his brother, which gave the charters to George Carteret and John Berkeley. Charles II also gave the charter to William Penn, which controlled West Jersey, and George Carteret and John Berkeley controlled East Jersey, which was under jurisdiction of what we call the province of New Jersey. And after those charters were revoked, abolished, it came back under the authority of the Crown, as we showed you under the province of New Jersey. And we just confirmed it with the second primary source, the legislative statute. Let's confirm it again. Property means possession. When you say property, you're saying the word possession. This is nothing new. We already been through this. Can they see this, Archbishop?
Yep.
This is what you call customs and uses preserved in time by the record, not by judicial decisions, by the legislature. Because at the time of the Articles of Confederation, there was no judges. Under the King's bench, the judges were the ones who made the legislation. Read what it says.
46:3-2. Certain tenures and holdings turned into free and common soakage. The tenures of honors, manors, lands, tenements or hereditaments, or of estates of inheritance at the common law, held either of the King of England or of any other person or body politic or corporate at any time before July 4th, 1776, and declared by Section 3 of an act entitled, An Act Concerning Tenures, passed February 18th, 1795, to be turned into holdings by free and common soakage from the time of their creation and forever thereafter, shall continue to be held in free and common soakage, discharged of all the tenures, charges, and incidents enumerated in said Section 3.
Okay, why? Because all the land was put back under the authority of the crown. It was put back under the crown. Why? Because there's no religious test for the public trust of the office of king. They don't want to do it because it's a violation of their constitution. No eligibility ought to be granted. That's Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution. It's Article 6 of the United States Constitution. No religious test is to be warranted for any public trust or public office. So if I can't question you on holding a public office for the legislative, executive, judicial branch, you can't question me on my office as a public trust as the King of England. Why? Because there's a statute for incorporation right here. King of England or any other person sitting as the King of England, or body politics or corporate through way of incorporation. We call that, or in the abstract world, what we call it? Incarnation. The incarnation of the king. A direct result of the incarnation of the king. Let me take you to another one. This is old news. This is going to be the last legislative statute I'll show you. I'm going to show you one more. Read that one for me, Archbishop.
46:3-6.
Title 46, property. Property means ownership. So if every one of you own, I have a parcel of land, you don't even have a parcel of land. You just got a real estate interest. You got an unbacked mortgage loan. That's not redeemable for anything. The only thing they gave you was a promise to pay back with a promise.
IOUs.
IOU. So you'll never be able to pay off the security interest. That's why the property has been pledged. That's why it's called a mortgage, a debt pledge. All right, they're going to show you right here in the statute.
46:3-6. Gifts, grants, and conveyances by state allodial. All gifts, grants, or conveyances made prior to and after July 4th, 1776 of any estate of inheritance, by letters patent under the great seal of this state, or any other manner by this state, by the legislative thereof, or by the commissioners or agents of forfeited estates, or by other lawful and competent authority under this state, shall be and remain allodial, and not feudal, and shall forever be and continue in free and pure allodium only, forever discharged of all feudal tenures and the incidents thereof, and all other services whatsoever.
Okay, so that embraces the concept of time immemorial. Because when you're dealing with allodial land, then the owner of the land, based off the concept of ownership, here it says it ain't no feudal tenures or estates and land given out. This land evidently belongs to somebody. It's validated right here in the statute. And that the land is allodial. So if you say it's owned by God, God is abstract.
Mm-hmm.
God ain't signed no contract or giving out deeds to nobody, as said in the Time Immemorial, according to the Bible, according to any other record, according to the time of usage of a custom tradition that you call your common law. Because what the issue is not the building, it's not what you got in the building, it's the land that the building is on. And there's a legislative statute reading right here that all letter patents is officially issued by a king.
Mm-hmm.
It's a charter. And charters were given to monopolies. And monopolies are corporations. All right, United States is a corporation. It's a confederate corporation, conglomerate of different nations, because the 13 confederations were nation states. They had their own administrative government. It was they had their own ideological government based off the charter, which was revoked. All right, I'm gonna show you one more to qualify our third primary source, which is actually the primary source. (3-13). Then we can move along. Right here. Read this. You there, Archbishop?
Yep, I'm here. 46:3-15, estates tell abolished. Whenever any conveyance, will, or instrument in writing shall hereafter be made, whereby any grantee, devisee, or other person shall become seized in law or in equity of such estate in any real estate, as under the statute of the 13th of Edward I, called the statute of entails, would have been held an estate in fetail of any type of character. Such conveyance, will, or instrument shall vest an estate in fee simple in such grantee, devisee, or other person.
Okay, this is evidentiary proof that they changed the beneficiaries of the estate to that what we call fee simple under what we call the eminent domain power of the state. By claiming that all the ancestors who are all the beneficiaries who are descendants of the ancestors who died without making a will died interstate. Meaning that we didn't make no will. We didn't make no will. Why? Because we conveyed it as we were living. And we create what we call statutes. We got a statute right here. But they repealed the statute by saying that all intel estates are now abolished as of Edward I. Why would they say that? Because they know that under the Edward I, under the Edwardian Wars, we were fighting amongst ourselves. Listen, y'all. Through the War of the Roses, we were fighting amongst ourselves. So the legislative authority preserved the estate as a result of the fight who would inherit the crown. And it started with Edward I. Edward I was married to Eleanor of Castile from the crown of Castile, whose great-great-great-great-grandfather was Ferdinand III, who was granted the Kingdom of Spain. Y'all need to understand this history. I showed you first primary, second primary, and third primary sources that validate our claim, going back to what we call Time Immemorial. And Time Immemorial was created by his great-great-great-grandfather, Henry II. He was of the Angevin crown. Let's pull that up right quick before I go on with this lecture. And she did. Read that, Archbishop.
House of Plantagenet, or the Plantagenet dynasty, was a royal house which originated from the lands of Anjou and Normandy in France. The family held the English throne from 1154 with the accession of Henry II at the end of the anarchy to 1485 when Richard III died in battle. Under the Plantagenets, England was transformed. The Plantagenet kings were often forced to negotiate compromises such as the Magna Carta, which had served to constrain their royal power in return for financial and military support. The king was no longer considered an absolute monarch in the nation, holding the prerogatives of judgment, feudal tribute, and warfare, but now also had defined duties to the kingdom, underpinned by a sophisticated justice system. A distinct national identity was shaped by their conflict with the French, Scots, Welsh, and Irish, as well as by the establishment of Middle English as the primary language.
Stop. So that means it said the Plantagenet crown was at war with the French, Scottish, Welsh, and Irish. Y'all better listen. We were at war with the French, Scottish, Welsh, and Irish, as well as the establishment of Middle English as their primary source. All right, let me go here. Oh, I thought I had it here. Read this first pack, read right here. From Alfred the Great, because everybody keep talking about, as I said in part 3, everybody keep talking about Rex 84, King Alfred's plan. King Alfred's plan is a plan that was going to be put in exercise. It's in effect now. It wasn't to exterminate Jew. It's the sins of Alfred the Great. It's everybody else.
It's to enforce the law.
They have to enforce the law.
His law is known as judgment.
It's shutting down now. Look what's going on around the world. China, France. You got world disasters going on right now as a result of the conflict that originated from the past.
Our own neighborhoods, communities.
Our own neighborhoods, communities. All right, look at the war, the drug overdoses, walking zombies in the neighborhoods. This is all being filtered and instituted by your government. Yep. Because the government is a shadow government. It's an ideological government based off ideas that they keep coming with to keep themselves in existence. It's not the ideal government that they wanted, because the ideal government was the English government. That was the ideal government. That's the ideal government for every government around the world. English government got their hands in every other government under the world by people other that are not English.
And how can you have an English government without an English king?
There you go. Alfred the Great, read that for my Bishop.
Alfred the Great saved England from Viking conquest in the late 9th century, and his grandson, Ethelstan, became the first king of England in 927. The disastrous reign of Ethelred the Unready ended in Danish conquest in 1014. Ethelred and his son Edmund Ironside attempted to resist the Vikings in 1016, but after their deaths, the Danish, Canute the Great and his sons ruled until 1042. The House of Wessex then briefly regained power under Ethelred's son, Edward the Confessor, but lost it after the Confessor's reign with the Roman conquest in 1066. All kings of England since Henry II have been descended from the House of Wessex through Henry's first wife, Matilda of Scotland, who was a great-granddaughter of Edmund Ironside.
Okay, so all the descendants of Alfred the Great are descendants of Henry II, who's the son of Godfrey the Fifth Count of Anjou, who's also the son of Fulk, ruler of Jerusalem, going back to the kingdom of Jerusalem, in reference to Jesus Christ, to Crusade Wars, 1, 2, 3, the 4 Crusades. The kingdoms of Wessex had a history going back to time immemorial, and time immemorial, according to the law, goes back to 1189. And 1189, John is the son of Henry II, the son of Godfrey. So everything in reference to anything immemorial has to go back to Godfrey the Fifth Count of Anjou, where my surname descends down from.
Mhm.
It's a blood name. It ain't talking about how many people got the name. It's the one who recognized who he is in reference to the name, because the name is hereditary. It's a birthright.
Like they
All
say,
right. So all the
speaking
kings
words.
of Wessex are kings, are descendants of the Plantagenet king through Margaret of Scotland, who married Henry I, the son of William the Conqueror, who invaded England. So that means that France and England became one under William the Conqueror. And all the laws that were under England, under Edward the Confessor, William the Conqueror said he's got to follow.
Yep.
This is history. All right. I got to look one more thing up. I had it up here, but I don't see it. The Angevin. Here we go. Read that, Archbishop. Now, we just read the kings of Wessex that were descendants of the house of Plantagenet. Now you're going to read it under Angevin crown, because that's the banner you see behind us. That's our flag. That's the Plantagenet crown. The Plantagenet crown controlled England and France through the marriage of Godfrey and Matilda of Scotland. You're going to read it again. Read it for him, Archbishop.
The Angevins were a royal house of Anglo-French origin that ruled England and then France in the 12th and early 13th centuries. Its monarchs were Henry II, Richard I, and John. Henry II won control of a vast assemblage of lands in Western Europe that would last for 80 years and would retrospectively be referred to as the Angevin Empire. As a political entity, this was structurally different from the preceding Norman and subsequent Plantagenet realms. Godfrey of Anjou became Duke of Normandy in 1144 and died in 1151. In 1152, his heir, Henry, added Aquitaine by virtue of his marriage to Eleanor of Aquitaine. Henry also inherited the claim of his mother, Empress Matilda, the daughter of King Henry I of England, and Matilda of Scotland, who was also the remaining descendant of the royal house of Wessex, to the English throne, to which Henry II succeeded in 1154 following the death of King Stephen, or Stefan.
So there you see it. It's read in reference to the Plantagenet crown, the House of Wessex, and then you have it in Angevin crown. So now I'm going to show you connection to the royal houses of the Plantagenet crown, which is linked to the King of Jerusalem. Let me just show you that real quick. Godfrey, that fifth count of Bancho.
And point of interest, for those of you who didn't know, but the Berber lion is a reference to the Lion of Judah.
Lion of Judah. Yes, the Lion of Judah.
So yo, Hebrew Israelites, you know, to bring yourself out of that abstract, you got to come to the concrete, and it's this way.
And what do you see? What line you see on the flag of Israel?
The Berber lion.
Mount Zion, all right? And then we see the origin of Israel as it's known in the Middle Ages. Read that right quick.
Folk, also known as Folk the Younger, was the Count of Anjou as Folk V from 1109 to 1129 and the King of Jerusalem, with his wife from 1131 to his death. During their reign, the Kingdom of Jerusalem reached its largest territorial extent.
You hear that? Through the reign of Folk V, the King of Jerusalem reached its largest extent. Let's just hit the Kingdom of Jerusalem. This is not abstract. This is concrete. We way down here.
And as you can see, the history even goes to during the time before and after time immemorial, so it has legal weight.
You don't real. Why? Because of the usage of the custom. The recorded income later, but the usage has always been in place. And as you can see here in the Kingdom of Jerusalem, our ancestors was there, based off the historical records, going back to time immemorial. We don't have no records in time immemorial going back to usage customs to the time era that you read in the Bible. But yet that story was written by our King James, who said to be the King of England, but he was no King of England.
He was the King of Scotland,
He was
who
the
was
King
just
of
sitting on the throne of England as a puppet.
As he said, because we just read the Plantagenet crown was born with the French, Scottish, Welsh, and Irish, and Irish. We just said that. We just proved it. All right. Let's get back to the nitty-gritty. All right. So we know New Jersey Provincial Council was ruled under the crown. Before it was ruled under the crown, it was composed of East Jersey, now, we just read a statute that all the lands between 1664 and March 12 was surrendered back to the crown. So all this territory they call East Jersey, right here. Let me just find the origin of it. Read this paragraph right here.
Between 1664 and 1674, most settlement was from other parts of the Americas, especially New England, Long Island, and the West Indies. Elizabethtown and Newark in particular had a strong Puritan character. South of the Raritan River, the Monmouth Tract was developed primarily by Quakers from Long Island. In 1675, East Jersey were partitioned into 4 counties for administrative purposes: Bergen County, Essex County, Middlesex County, and Monmouth County. There were 7 established towns: Shrewsbury, Middleton, Piscataway, Woodbridge, Elizabethtown, Newark, and Bergen.
Stop. Okay. Now let's look at it. That was under George Carteret and John Berkeley. They surrendered their territory back to the crown in 1702 to 1776. So that means that the crown, the king, his government, and his people was here from 1702 to 1776. And we're not talking about the colonists. You all better listen. We're not talking about colonists, because the colonists were under the authority of the British crowns, which didn't come into power till the uniting of England, Ireland, and Scotland in 1707. Prior to that, England and their parliaments were separate from Ireland and Scotland. And they were governing the territories here in North America because of the war with the French. Going back to the Capital Plantagenet dynasty, which ended with the Treaty of Paris of 1259. We had the 1783 Treaty of Paris with King George III. You have the 1763 Treaty of Paris with King Louis XVI. He was from the House of Bourbons, and they were from the Kingdom of France, which inhabited the territory of what we call Western North America, from St. Francis I to Louis XV. We're going to show you that in a second. All right, so this is the East New Jersey, West New Jersey. Just a brief description of it. Hold on, let me find it. Right here, start right here. The Dutch.
The Dutch defeated New Sweden in 1655. Settlement of the West Jersey area by Europeans will thin until English conquest in 1664. Beginning in the late 1670s, Quakers settled in great numbers in this area, first in present-day Salem County and then in Burlington. The latter became the capital of West Jersey. Before 1674, land surveyors for New Jersey considered it as 100 and partitioned it to the Thames. West Jersey comprised 5 of the Thames, but the demarcation of the boundaries awaited settlement. The quit rents settlers would pay, and the land surveying, which the money would purchase. Thus, it took years and multiple surveys to settle boundary disputes. Burlington County was formed on May 17, 1694, by combining the first and the second Thames. At least 3 surveys were conducted of West Jersey. Richard Tyndall.
Stop right there. All right, so as you can see, the governor at that time was Edward Bingham, and he was a Quaker. To read the first paragraph. No, just the first and second paragraph.
Edward Billings was a British colonial administrator and governor of West New Jersey from 1680 to 1687 until his death in England. Billings owned a large section of land in New Jersey with the Quakers. Billings was a London brewer. He purchased land in New Jersey in 1674 from Sir John Berkeley, and deal also involving John Fenwick. Billings's financial position was complicated by bankruptcy, and after negotiations involved William Penn. The purchase in 1675 was reassigned to a trust involving Fenwick Penn and others with the Billings. The planning of Quaker colonies then proceeded.
All right. So as we can see, all the territories of West Jersey, that under George Colbert and John Berkeley, was sold to John Fenwick, right? And it said, where did we get that? Yeah, it says, Billing was London brewer. He purchased land in Jersey in 1674 from Sir John Berkeley. So Sir John Berkeley was one of the proprietors in East Jersey, and then West Jersey, which was Quakers, took the land until it was surrendered back to the crown in 1702. All right, and that was a result of Charles II restoration to power under the crown, under what they call an interregnum. And we see William Penn was the founder of Pennsylvania. And as I said before, you got a Yorktown, Pennsylvania, you got a Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and you got a Liverpool, Pennsylvania. And we know that Charles II, Charles I was the son of Charles I, who was married to Henrietta of France. And we just read through the Treaty of Alliance that France had a contract with the United States. Let's view the contract real quick before I move on. I went through this yesterday, just going over it again. Just, yeah, right, sorry.
All right. Following the Declaration of Independence, the American Revolution was well received in France. The French monarchy and Louis XVI were sympathetic to the colonists' plight and provided clandestine aid in the form of supplies and loans. This was all the more crucial because of the structural incapacity of the Continental Congress to raise money. At the beginning of the war, the colonies were a very loose confederation, bound ideologically, but not administratively. And at the end, to the consternation of men like Alexander Hamilton and Robert Morris, the Continental Congress was unable to pry money from governors who refused to acknowledge the authority of a central government.
Okay, so Louis XVI acknowledged the flight of the fledgling nation called the Articles of Confederation under their administration. And it says that Alexander Hamilton and the likes of Robert Morrison, administration that they created was a weak institutionalized government, and it was only an ideological government, not an administrative government. We read that under the Articles of Confederation. Here's another source saying the same thing, that it was just an ideological government because they were under the central government and the only power that they had was that of king and parliament. All right. Now we know that Benjamin Franklin was a patriot. His son was a loyalist who worked for the crown up to 1776 when he tried to reconvene. All right. But it was paroled by the Provincial Congress to have him locked up. Read the second paragraph.
Benjamin Franklin played a crucial role in winning the war from his seat at Passy in France. He was dispatched along with Silas Deane and Arthur Lee in December of 1776 to get badly needed military and financial support. He was welcomed with great enthusiasm as numerous Frenchmen embarked for America to volunteer for the war effort. Motivated by the prospect of glory in battle or animated by the sincere idols of liberty and republicanism, volunteers included the likes of Pierre Charles L'Enfant and Lafayette, who enlisted in 1776. But Franklin's most important contribution was in the financial realm. In 1777, the American delegation obtained a 2 million pound livre tournoi, or tournoi pounds, loan from a group of French investors known as the Framers General.
Stop. Okay, so we see Benjamin Franklin and Robinson Morris had a hand in the financial Revolutionary War, right? And then it says that Louis XVI assisted them, right? They had a debt that they had to pay to. Louis XVI considered down from the House of Bourbon. The House of Bourbon was the cadet branch, like the House of Berlioz, which was controlling New France. Let's go there now, since we know that Louis XVI had a hand in playing in the Revolutionary War with the sister of Benjamin Franklin and Robert Morrison. You just said the names here. Where was it at? Pay attention to these names, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Where I see Robert Morris? Didn't I just see him? Oh, right here, Robert Morris. Now let's go to slavery in Pennsylvania right quick, if it's there. Right here. The same ones who helped finance the colonies and during the Revolution are the same ones who participated in slavery in Pennsylvania, because that's where they met under the Articles of Confederation in Pennsylvania, which was founded by William Penn, a Quaker. All right, this is here, as you can see it here. It says history of slavery in Pennsylvania. I'm gonna be brief with it. Right there. Read that part right there.
Says the first record to religious resistance.
Yes.
Religious resistance to slavery and the slave import taxes led the colony to ban slave imports in 1767. Slaveholders among the state's founding fathers included Benjamin Franklin, John Dickinson, Robert Morris, Edmund Physick, and Samuel Mifflin. Franklin and Dickinson both gradually became supporters of abolition.
All right, as you can see,
Or abolishing, excuse me.
Robert Morrison created the first Bank of America. As you can see, the one who helped finance it. Just read the first paragraph.
Robert Morris Jr. was an English-born merchant and a founding father of the United States. He served as a member of the Pennsylvania Legislature, the Second Continental Congress, and the United States Senate, and he was the signer of the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and the United States Constitution. From 1781 to 1784, he served as the Superintendent of Finance of the United States, becoming known as the financier of the Revolution. Along with Alexander Hamilton and Albert Gallatin, he is widely regarded as one of the founders of the financial system of the United States.
Read that first paragraph, first right to Philadelphia.
Born in Liverpool, Morris migrated to North America in his teens, quickly becoming a partner in a successful shipping firm based in Philadelphia.
Stop. Now, guess what he was shipping? Slaves.
Slaves.
Robert Morrison was a slave trader. He had a company called Thomas and Willing Company, using slaves as commodity. That's what they did in Pennsylvania. Robert Morrison, Benjamin Franklin, they were all slave traders. Why? Because the slave origin goes back to Liverpool.
Now, point of interest, these are British slave traders who are trying to take over the position or image of being English when they're not.
Exactly. Very, 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 very important. Because
what happened?
The same people. Y'all were slave traders. No, we were not. It was the monarch sitting on the throne of England that was under the authority of the jurisdiction governed by the monarchs of England that go back to Time Immemorial, back to our ancestors. Because Liverpool, England was chartered by John, who signed the Magna Carta. But Liverpool has a long history outside of that charter given by John. Let's revisit it, which I talked about in part 3. Read the, let's go ahead, history. Origin of the town.
All right. Although a small moat and bailey castle had earlier been built at West Derby, the origins of the city of Liverpool are usually dated from August 28, 1207, when letters patent were issued by King John advertising the establishment of a new borough, Liverpool, and inviting settlers who come and take up holdings there. It is thought that the king wanted a port in the district that was free from the control of Earl of Chester. Initially, it served as a dispatch point of troops sent to Ireland. Soon after the building around 1235 of Liverpool Castle, which was removed in 1726.
Stop right there. Okay. So as we can see, the letter we know that the ability to be able to operate the monopolies by letter patent. We see a letter patent get created by John. John is the son of Henry II, son of Godfrey the fifth Count of Anjou, who were descendants of the kings of Wessex, who established all the land descendants. We know Cambridge was created by Henry III. We know Oxford was created by Henry III. These are the schools where the historians or the learned ones went to learn prehistory or recorded history, or to document that recorded history based off the prehistory that was based off usages and customs of the people. All right. And these universities are still around today. None of the scholars who went to the universities, so-called going back to time immemorial, that goes back to England, Egyptian and Jerusalem, none of those universities are around today. None of those scholars are around today. None of the records are around today. We just read based off the record that the majority of the records that preserve the histories of the past was from France and Germany. We know Germany invaded England. We know France became subject to England as a result of Godfrey the fifth Count of Anjou. All right. So we know that the slave trade history had nothing to do with the origin of the people who lived and the origin where the slave trade took place, which we call Liverpool, Lancaster. Because we know we got a Liverpool, Pennsylvania, we got a York, Pennsylvania, and we got a Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And all these names were named after the houses of the Yorks and the Lancasters. All right, which were cadet branches of the Plantagenet crown. And we know Liverpool was in Lancasters, and which was created in the slave trade in Liverpool. So you have the Elizabeth era. Elizabeth era goes into the House of Tudors. She was the daughter of Henry VIII. Henry VIII was descended from the Lancasters. Right, we know that George Fox, the founder of the Quakers, and Thomas Bell, he was the Duchess of Lancaster, which was created by Edward III. Edward III was the father of John Gaunt, who was the father of Henry IV, V, VI, until you get to Henry VII, who was the founder of the House of Tudors. Henry VIII of the House of Tudors, Elizabeth I of the House of Tudors. And that's when they started the slave trade. How we know that? Let's read it. Read it right here. Hold on, let me make sure that's it. Right here. Transatlantic slave trade.
All right. The first cargo from the Americas was recorded in 1648. The development of the town accelerated after the restoration of 1660, with the growth of trade with America and its West Indies. From that time, may be traced a rapid progress of population and commerce until Liverpool had to become the second metropolis of Great Britain. Initially, cloth, coal, and salt from Lancashire and Cheshire was exchanged for sugar and tobacco. The town's first sugar refinery was established in 1667. In 1699, Liverpool was made a parish on its own by Act of Parliament, separate from that of Walton on the Hill, with two parish churches. At the same time, it gained separate customs authority from Chester. Slave trade privateering. In 1699, the first known slave ship to sail from Liverpool departed. Its name and number of victims unknown. The last recorded slaving voyage out of Liverpool was in 1862, of a total of 4,973 such voyages. One example is the Liverpool merchant that set sail for Africa on October 3rd, 1699. The very same year that Liverpool had been granted status as an independent parish. It arrived in Barbados with a cargo of 220 Africans. Returning to Liverpool on September 18, 1700, by the close of the 18th century, 40% of the world's and 80% of Britain's activity in the Atlantic slave trade was accounted for by slave ships that voyaged from the docks at Liverpool. In the peak year of 1799, ships sailing from Liverpool carried over 45,000 enslaved people from Africa.
You see that? And so it says 40% of the world and 80% of Britain's activity in the slave trade was accounted by slave ships voyaging from the docks of Liverpool. Did y'all hear that? From the docks of Liverpool, Lancasters. Lancaster is symbolic of the House of Lancaster. Let's just go there briefly. I talked about this yesterday.
And point of interest, you think they were actually taking people from Africa and they weren't taking so-called people from the territory that they were so-called docking from?
Yep. me see if I said that. No, I didn't. But for the sake of time, we're going to move on. All right. So as we can see, the Quakers, who were of Philadelphia, because we know that East Jersey and West Jersey was surrendered to Edward Bingling. Edward Bingling was a property of West Jersey. And we know West Jersey encompassed the territories that was under the charge given by Charles II, which was given to Duke of York. And we just read a modern day primary choice statutory legislation said that all those charges given by those monarchs were recalled. So the territory remains under the crown. The only thing that's missing is the person sitting on the crown. That's the king. Because all the authority that were given to the 13 colonies were given by the crown under the king. But the proper king wasn't there as a result of those treaties that were invalid, because we know that the treaties made with the United States as a pledge of nation was based off the Treaty of Alliance that were made in 1776, then verified in 1781. Prior to that, they had other treaties, the Treaty of Paris of 1763, which treated all the territories of what we call New French or to Great Britain. Then you have what we call New Spain. What brings me to this argument? Because you had territories not just dealing with Louisiana and Mississippi, but you had territories dealing with Minnesota. And Minnesota was the home of what we call the Dakota people. Now, we already went into the French and Indian War. The French Indian War was with Louis XVI from the House of Bourbon. It was called the 700-year war, the 7-year war. French Indian War was called the 7-year war, which resulted in the Treaty of Paris of 1763. And that 7-year war was resulted from the kings of France, started with Francis I and ended with Louis XVI. As we said, Louis XVI helped finance, United States, and United States built a consular in Liverpool. Let's just visit that real quick. Since we know Liverpool, Lancaster was the origin of slave trade. Let's go back there, history of Liverpool. Right there. Just read to here, Liverpool, 1790.
Says, vast profits transformed Liverpool into one of Britain's foremost cities. Liverpool became a financial center rivaled by Bristol, Bristol, another slaving port, and exceeded only by London. The first commercial wet dock in the world was built in Liverpool and completed in 1715 with a capacity of 100 ships. The commercial growth led to the opening of the consulate of the United States in Liverpool in 1790.
Oh, okay, so United States of America, because Article 1 of the Articles of Confederation said you should be styled the United States of America. And the United States of America was nothing but 13 colonies. All right. They didn't get their government up and running until 1789. Under the Articles of Confederation, which said that all engagement treaties made is supreme law of the land, and everyone who made up that ideological government is subject to the laws made under the Articles of Confederation, which is subject to the Treaty of Alliance made with France. That's what they said. But now the United States has created a consular embassy in Liverpool, and Liverpool was dealing with slavery under the British Crown. Let's just go there. Read that.
The United States Consulate in Liverpool, England, was established in 1790 and was the first overseas consulate founded by the then fledgling United States of America. Liverpool was, at the time, an important center for transatlantic commerce and a vital trading partner for the former 13 colonies.
Stop. There don't need to be no more. As you can see, it was a trading position, put the United States in a better position for trade and commerce, because we know that the Treaty of Alliance was based off what? Trade and commerce.
Trade and commerce.
So the Treaty of Amity and Commerce. That's the only thing that the United States were put here for commerce. Trade is a monopoly. A monopoly is subject to antitrust law, or what we call trade practices. Look it up. It's a fact. All right. So since we understand that all the treaties made with the United States has been between prior to being revoked by the the crown in 1702 was made with France. France is the king. Why? Because all the territory that was based upon the what they call earthworks were from the Mexico, Mississippi, Louisiana, and they took that and transferred it over from when we were over on the European continent. Because most of those castles are under what they call earthworks, mounds, moats and baileys. That's what you call earthworks. You see the same type of display in Mississippi culture. Let's just prove it. We went through the history of Mississippi. History of Mississippi was founded by the Kingdom of France. Let's just go do that right quick. Because my father and my great-grandfather come from France, Mississippi. And they both were the surname Jefferson. My grandfather, as you can see in art, if I'm not mistaken, part 2 of Monopoly, is a Native American. Some may say like an Indian, but that's not a proper term for us. He's a Native American. He was born in Marion County, Mississippi. Marion County, Mississippi is a territory that's close to the Mississippi Delta, where most Mississippians went for work. All right? It was colonized by what they said French. Initial colonization of the region was carried out by French. Through France, which ceded their control over portions of the regions of Spain and Britain to the Treaty of Paris of 1763. So there's no need to revisit it, because we know that prior to the British colonies coming here, under 13 colonies, France was controlling the ball game. You agree, Archbishop?
Say the last part again.
I said, as a result of the Treaty of Paris, prior to the Treaty of Paris of 1763, the 13 colonies in British had no control over here.
Right.
Because the British and Irish and Scottish crowns united in 1707, right? They were still trying to become set up shop here when French was already here.
Yeah, because New France and New Spain was already over here.
Exactly, New France and New Spain. So that brings me to the territories now we know as Louisiana, Mississippi, Minnesota, because that was all of what we call Louisiana territory. Let's just visit that if I got it here. This is it. Right here. Here we go. Yeah. French colonization. As you can see, the territory in blue, it's France. All right. It's France. All the territory here is under the Kingdom of France, from Francis I to Louis XVI. All the territory we ceded back to Great Britain, the Treaty of Paris of 1763. There was other treaties made prior to that. Treaty of Uber 1714, but those was prior treaties, but that did involve modern day administrations. They go back to previous or prior conflicts that resulted from France and other territories. But we're just dealing with here in the United States, and as we can see, New France is a vast territory. As we can see, the territories in what's that, orange, is Great Britain. And then the other territories that are in like a pinkish color is Great Britain, and that is in orange is what they call the Spanish territories.
Mm-hmm. And New France also claimed territories that was also unoccupied or undiscovered. They claimed too as well.
Yes. All right, here we go. The French first came to the New World as travelers seeking the route to the Pacific Ocean and wealth. Major French exploration of North America began under the rule of Francis I, King of France. Francis I was the first king, and he was from the house of Valios. Everybody see his house in Algomene. I talked about this already in my last podcast. For those who are not familiar, it would do you a good justice to refresh your mind. Read the first paragraph.
Francis I was king of France from 1515 until his death in 1547. He was the son of Charles the Count of Angoulême and Louise of Savoy. He succeeded his first cousin once removed and father-in-law Louis XII, who died without a legitimate son.
Okay, this is the 16th century, y'all. It's before the Treaty of Paris. You're dealing with the first king of France from the House of Velios, which is this cadet branch of the Capetan dynasty. Then you got the House of Bourbon. Louis XVI was from the House of Bourbon. All right, let's see here. His house right here says Velios and Avalamin. Just click this. Read the first paragraph, Archbishop.
The Capetian House of Valois, they succeeded the House of Capet, or direct Capetians, to the French throne, and were the House of France from 1328 to 1589. Junior members of the family founded cadet branches in Orleans, Anjou, Burgundy, and Alençon.
In the class. Go ahead, Archbishop. What you said?
The Valois descended from Charles, Count of Valois, 1270-1325, the second surviving son of King Philip III of France, reigned 1270 to 1285.
Okay, continue.
Their title to the throne was based on the president in 1316, later retroactively attributed to the Merovingian Salic law, which excluded females, Joan II of Navarre, as well as male descendants through the distaff side, Edward III of England, from the succession to the French throne.
Okay, very important. It says the distaff side. When you discharge a person, that means to deny him his birthright. Distaff is a antonym of spear-sided. See that? Distaff. Now,
Maternal side.
say it again.
Distaff, the female or maternal branch of the family.
Okay, so that's called that's through matrilineal.
Matrilineal, yep.
You know what I'm saying? That's not patrilineal. So it's the distaff side of the family versus the spear side.
Which is the father, or patrilineal.
Read that for him.
Spear side, the male or paternal branch of a family.
Okay. Hold on. I want to go ahead. Patrilineal. Paternal. From the father. Everybody see that? From the father, not the mother. The mother is the distaff side. The father is the spear side. This is why King Edgar was called King Edgar, rich in spears, rich in descendants, the spear side. All right, it says Jesus was pierced in his side, spear sided. It said Eve was taken from Adam's rib, spirit sided. Now you got the stiff side, this staff. Understand what's going on here? So it says the House of Velios was a cadet branch from the Capetan dynasty. All right, and you're dealing with Mississippi, Louisiana. These territories were ruled by the French side of the Capetan dynasty. We know that, and it said that in the result of their existence is the result of the distaff side of Edward III of England. Edward III was a Plantagenet. And as the War of the Roses, the distaff side came into play, the maternal side, because it's the mother. All right, let's prove it. Kings of France. All right, we know New France was founded by Francis I and Louis XVI. Louis XVI helped finance the United States. All the territory governed by France was ceded to what we call the United States in the Treaty of Paris of 1763. Now, I was studying the other day, and it brought me to Minnesota, because they had a lake called Lake Plantagenet. Like, what they doing with a lake called Lake Plantagenet? So I did a little more research into it. Everybody see that? Read that for them.
Lake Plantagenet is a lake in the U.S. state of Minnesota. The name of the lake commemorates the House of Plantagenet. Its name in the Ojibwe language is the Ozawanebe Zagan Igen, which means Yellowhead Lake, named after Ozawaneb or Ozawaneb, my bad, I'm butchering the name. And Ojibwe, who guided Henry Schoolcraft to the nearby Elk Lake, renamed by Schoolcraft Lake Itasca.
Okay, all right. So the name of the Lake Plantagenet, as we read here, was a lake referred to from the House of Plantagenet. And it was named by Henry Schoolcraft, who was guided. Now, Henry Schoolcraft was a geologist, a geographer, as well as an ethnologist. All right. Now, what is he first doing with this name, Schoolcraft? Right? Because I got a problem, because Minnesota is a territory now, or a state in the United States that came up under the jurisdiction of what we call France, because it was colonized by France. Let's just get it, just prove that. History of France. Start right here first.
Minnesota, which gets its name from the Dakota language, has been inhabited by various indigenous peoples since the woodland period of the 11th century BCE. Between roughly 200 and 500 CE, which is current era, two areas of the indigenous Hopewell tradition emerged: the Laurel Complex in the north and the Trampilo Hopewell in the Mississippi River Valley.
South, okay.
The south.
So first they said that the Dakota language has been inhabited by various indigenous people. Dakota means murky water. That's what Dakota means. It means murky water. Let's see what it says. Let's see what they got. Definition. Let's see if I can find it. Well, first of all, let's get to the point. It involved the Hopewell traditions, the Mississippi River Valley, as well as the upper Mississippian culture. This involved what we call the mound builders, the mound cultures, those who built those mounds. All right. When these colonists came over here and did the research, they was only doing research and keeping records of what was already going on in these areas involving those people at this particular time.
Right.
That they want to so-called say is Indians, but these are Native Americans, because we know that Native America was ruled under the British Empire. You know, the British Empire was composed of the people who were subject to the laws of that empire. Because Native American Indians were considered Aboriginal people, and their charters were recognized by the kings of England, or those under the British crown. All right, let's go into a little history of, let's go here. Right here, Minnesota, not Dakota. Minnesota means cloudy water. Read it.
The word Minnesota comes from the Dakota, named for the Minnesota River, which got its name from one of the two words in Dakota, which means clear blue water, or Minnesota, which means cloudy water. Dakota people demonstrated the name to early settlers by dropping milk into water and call it Minnesota. Many places in the state have similar Dakota names, such as Minnehaha Falls, curling water, or waterfall, Minneska, which is white water, Minneota, much water, and Minnetonka, big water, Minnetrista, crooked water, and Minneapolis, a hybrid word combining Dakota, Minne, which is water, and Polis, Greek for city.
Okay, so that means that the word Minnesota or Dakota, or the people who lived in Minnesota or Dakota had their affiliation because names are given to places by the people there. So it's associated with the water. That's all it means. All right, let's go here. Start right here. Because Dakota was made of the Ojibwe and the Anishinaabe people. All right, start there.
The Anishinaabe, also known as Ojibwe, was Chippewa, were migrating into Minnesota, causing tensions with the Dakota people, and dislocated the Mdewakanton from their homelands along Millilox Lake. Explorers such as Daniel Graysalon, Sierra Duluth, and Father Louis Hennepin, Jonathan Carver, Henry Schoolcraft, and Joseph Nicolet mapped the state.
Okay, so you said Henry Schoolcraft mapped the state. He was a geographer. He was a geologist, and he studied geography. Read the next paragraph.
The region was part of Spanish Louisiana from 1762 to 1802. The portion of the state east of the Mississippi River became, got to move the block.
I'm sorry.
Became part of the United States at the end of the American Revolutionary War, when the Second Treaty of Paris was signed. Land west of the Mississippi was acquired with the Louisiana Purchase.
1 second. So the Second Treaty of Paris talking about is 1783. The first one that they assumed was 1763, but that was not the first one. The first one was in 1259. That was the first Treaty of Paris. They just erased that one and just dealt with the one of 1763 and 1783. All right, which we read about now. And it said the region was part of what we call Spanish Louisiana. All right. Now we know that the French controlled Louisiana territory, but they also had the Spanish territory ruled by the Spanish in Louisiana. So just read what that is. Like I said, my ancestors carried the name Jefferson, and the origin of that name is from French. So the territory and the name is right on point. And I know that the name didn't just pop on the scene. And I know my ancestors didn't just pop on the scene as Negroes and Blacks and colors. Read that.
Louisiana, or the province of Louisiana, was a province of New Spain from 1762 to 1801, primarily located in the center of North America, encompassing the western basin of the Mississippi River, plus New Orleans. The area had originally been claimed and controlled by France, which had named its La Louisiana in honor of King Louis XIV in 1682. Spain secretly acquired the territory from France near the end of the 7 Years' War by the terms of the Treaty of Fontainebleau. The actual transfer of authority was a slow process, and after Spain finally attempted to fully replace French authorities in New Orleans in 1767, French residents staged an uprising, which the new Spanish colonial governor did not suppress until 1769.
Yeah, that's fine. So the territory called New Spain was ruled by Louis XIV, which was the province of New Spain, was a governor of Louisiana in the province of New Spain, because Spain had other territory besides the territory we're speaking about. And it was under the governorship of Louis XIV. He's from the House of Bourbons, and he was the king of France. What house was he from? Bourbon. Everybody see that, the House of Bourbon. So from Louis XVI, Louis XV, Louis XIV were from the House of Bourbon. A cadet branch from the House of Capitan. just like the House of Berlioz, because the first king of France was Francis I. Everybody needs to understand that. All right. So being that we're dealing with Lake Plantagenet, and Lake Plantagenet is in a territory called Minnesota, and Minnesota was colonized under the kings of France, as we just proved. So if that's the case, we know that this land, this term or this name was given to the kings of France. How we know that? Because they had a conflict with these Roman Catholic Frankish kings who are now ruling under the Frankish Burgish dynasties or cadet branches from the Capetine dynasty. All right. Now Louis XVI. This is Louis XV. He was also a king of France from the House of Bourbon, as we can see here. So why do I say this? It just brings me to my point. Henry Schoolcraft. Now we're dealing with Lake Plantagenet, and this territory surrounds Native Americans who was living along the lake, which happened to be how somebody else gonna come and give a lake a name if you're not from the territory where that lake was actually originated from, because this guy's an American. It didn't say what's his nationality, Archbishop.
Says he's an American.
American. What's his specialties?
Geographer, geologist, ethnologist.
Okay, if you from England, then, and he went to a modern day school, he didn't come from great Cambridge or Oxford or King of England. He's American. His nationality is America. America didn't get its fruition to 1789. America was still known in the Articles of Confederation of 1776. So this guy, Schoolcraft, is a geographer, a geologist, and an ethnologist. All right. And everybody know what an ethnologist is. Let's make sure. Read that for him.
Ethnology is an academic field and discipline that compares and analyzes the characteristics of different peoples and the relationships between them. Compare cultural, social, or social-cultural anthropology.
That's good. All right. So it has to do with studying other people's nations. All right. That's what it means. So this guy has a national name, Henry Schoolcraft. He's an American at the time of the founding of this fledgling country. But he has an American nationality, but his name is Schoolcraft. So let's get the origin of the last name Schoolcraft. England and Ireland. Read that from our business.
So the name Schoolcraft belongs to the early history of Britain. Its origins lie with the Anglo-Saxons. It is a product of their having lived in the village of Shoals in the parish of Barwick in the West Riding of Yorkshire. At the time of the taking of the Domesday Book in 1806, Shoals was the site of 3 churches and 3 mills.
1086.
Oh, 1086, Shoals was the site of 3 churches and 3 mills.
Okay, so the name or the name Schoolcraft is a name that originated in Yorkshire, England. Yorkshire, England is a term used for the Yorks. Let's just prove it. But this guy is an American, but you got an English name. Right there. Read this right here.
All right. The emblem of Yorkshire is the white rose of the English Royal House of York, and the most commonly used flag representative for Yorkshire is the white rose on the blue field. which after nearly 50 years of use was recognized by the Flag Institute on July 29, 2008.
Stop right there. House of York.
The House of York was a cadet branch of the English Royal House of Plantagenet. 3 of its members became kings of England in the late 15th century. The House of York descended in the male line from Edmund of Langley, 1st Duke of York, the 4th surviving son of Edward III. In time, it also represented Edmund III's senior line. When the heir of York married the heiress descendant of Lionel, Duke of Clarence, Edward III's 2nd surviving son. It is based on these descents that they claimed the English crown. Compared with its rival, the House of Lancaster, it had a superior claim to the throne of England according to cognatic primogeniture, but an inferior claim according to agnatic primogeniture. The reign of this dynasty ended with the death of Richard III of England at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485. It became extinct in the male line with the death of Edward Plantagenet, 17th Earl of Warwick in 1499.
Okay, so we just said that the House of York is symbolic of the red flag, white rose.
Right,
The House of Lancaster is symbolic of the red rose.
The red rose. Yep.
Let's go there now. Read that.
The House of Lancaster was a cadet branch of the Royal House of Plantagenet. The first house was created when King Henry III of England created the Earldom of Lancaster, from which the house was renamed for his second son, Edmund Crouch, back in 1267. Edmund had already been created Earl of Leicester in 1265 and was granted the lands and privileges of Simon de Montfort, the 6th Earl of Leicester, after de Montfort's death and attainder at the end of the Second Barons' War. When Edmund's son,
stop right there. All right, start right here. Start here.
The second house of Lancaster was descended from John of Gaunt, who married the heiress of the first house, Blanche of Lancaster, and Blanche of Lancaster was a Beaumont, for those who don't know. Edward III married all his sons to wealthy English heiresses rather than following his predecessor's practice by finding continental political marriages for royal princesses. Henry of Rosemont, the 1st Duke of Lancaster, had no male heir, so Edward married his son John to Henry's heiress daughter and John's 3rd cousin, Blanche of Lancaster. This gave John the vast wealth of his House of Lancaster. Their son Henry usurped the throne in 1399, creating one of the factions in the Wars of the Roses. There was an intermittent dynastic struggle between the descendants of Edward III. In these wars, the term Lancastrian became a reference to members of the family and their supporters. The family provided England with 3 kings, Henry IV, Henry V, and Henry VI. The house became extinct in the male line upon the death or murder in the Tower of London of Henry VI, following the battlefield execution of his son Edward of Westminster, Prince of Wales, by supporters of the House of York in 1471. Lancastrian cognatic descent from John of Gaunt and Blanche of Lancaster's daughter Philippe continued in the royal houses of Spain and Portugal, while the Lancastrian political cause was maintained by Henry Tudor, a relatively unknown scion of the Beauforts, eventually leading to the establishment of the House of Tudor.
Stop. Okay. So as a result of the Yorks and Lancasters fighting amongst themselves, Henry Tudor broke in or came into power. All right. This is a result in the break of agnatic succession. This is the reason why I was put in the trust. Let's look up agnatic succession. Read the first paragraph.
Agnatic seniority is a patrilineal principle of inheritance, where the order of succession to the throne prefers the monarch's younger brother over the monarch's own sons. And monarch's children, the next generation, succeed only after the males of the elder generation have all been exhausted. Agnatic seniority essentially excludes females of the dynasty and their descendants from the succession. Contrast agnatic primogeniture, where the king's sons stand higher in succession than his brothers.
Let's go to the examples. Right here. Now, this is an example that they gave you. And look who the example is.
Angevin Empire. The County of Anjou followed inheritance by agnatic seniority. When Henry II of England married Eleanor of Aquitaine, creating the Angevin Empire, this resulted in some question over what inheritance laws would affect their children. As Henry II's father was the Count of Anjou, and he inherited England and Normandy through his mother, Henry II's eldest son, the young Henry, died before him. So the throne passed to his next eldest son, Richard I of England. Henry II's third son, Godfrey II, Duke of Brittany, died 3 years before his father, but his pregnant wife later gave birth to a son, Arthur of Brittany. When Richard was mortally wounded during a castle siege on his deathbed, he named his brother John, Henry II's fourth and youngest son, as his heir. However, the inheritance was questioned by the young Arthur of Brittany, then 12 years old. Arthur argued that as the son of John's older brother, Godfrey, he was the rightful heir of Richard and Henry II according to the laws of agnatic primogeniture, which was followed in England and Normandy. John countered that as the male line heirs to the Counts of Anjou, the Angevin Empire followed the succession law of Anjou, which was based on agnatic seniority. Thus, John claimed that as Richard's younger brother, he stood in line ahead of his nephew. Arthur continued to press this claim for the next 4 years, allying with the King of France against John, though Richard's deathbed declaration of John as his heir provided greater strength to his claim. Ultimately, Arthur was captured in battle, imprisoned, and presumably killed by John. The matter was never definitively decided, as John lost all continental land possessions in France and had to relinquish any claim to rule of Anjou.
This is still going on today. This is the exact result of that. All right, he married Eleanor of Aquitaine. Who is Eleanor of Aquitaine? Look at that. Look at the statute and its decaying. All right, read that paragraph. We come to our closing.
Eleanor of Aquitaine was Queen of France from 1137 to 1152 as the wife of King Louis VII, Queen of England from 1154 to 1189 as the wife of King Henry II, and Duchess of Aquitaine in her own right from 1137 until her death in 1204. As the heiress of the House of Poitiers, which controlled much of southwestern France, she was one of the wealthiest and most powerful women in Western Europe during the High Middle Ages. She was the patron of poets such as Wace, Benoit de Saint-Maure, Bernat de Ventadorn. She was a key leading figure in the Second Crusade.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so as we can see, one second, I keep doing that. Going back to Schoolcraft. Where's he at? Right, Schoolcraft. Then we Schoolcraft. Start right here. Right here. This marriage. Now he got this name Schoolcraft. We know Schoolcraft originated in Yorkshire. And we know Yorkshire gets its name from the House of Yorks, as well as Lancaster, gets its authority from the Lancaster, House of Lancaster, which were all cadet branches that originated from Edward III. Edward III was the son of Edward II. Edward II was the son of Edward I. Edward I was the son of Henry III. Henry III was the son of John, who signed the Magna Carta, son of Henry II, son of Godfrey I, Count of Anjou, who started the Plantagenet, which started the Angevin, which broken out to what we call the House of Lancaster, York and Lancaster, from which the House of Tudors originated. All right. So here's this guy, Schoolcraft. Schoolcraft here in North America, American, I might add, who takes on the job skills as a geographer, a geologist, and an ethnologist in regards to studying the nationality of the natives here in North America. But he's American. Where did he get this name from when the Native Americans that he's doing had French origin? The Native Americans here have French origin because they were called free people of color. They were enslaved, but they were free people of color, going back to those Edwardian descendants. Because we know that the slave trade or the transatlantic slave trade took place in Liverpool. And the ship that started or sailed from Liverpool was what? Brooks. The Brooks, 1781. And we know that the geographical locations that were under the jurisdiction of what we call the British Empire, which preceded by the English Empire, was those states that were enslaved. So nationality, all those territories over there, what we call European, were under the British control. Before that, present history was created for them. And then the history that was told to them for their existence was prescripted. Archbishop, you want to say something?
Yeah, like you said, that those Native Americans, once again, were free people of color who have went through many different legal fictions, just to get them underneath the terms that we call Negro, Black, and color today. Even still, like I said, the term Native just meant born in that territory. It can mean going all the way back to the time of the original occupiers, who was enslaved, going back to the so-called indentured servants. And as the time went on, they all started taking on that same look. So many of our people just came under many different classifications, but it was the name itself that you were born with, lineal descent-wise, of what brings in your inheritance.
Mm-hmm. And it's preserved by the legislation. And we're going to show you one more, or two more rather, primary sources to validate what we say before we close. 16.1-28. So where y'all get y'all power from? I know everybody asking that. Where does this power come from? Where does this authority come from? Where you get it from? I'm going to show you.
It's passed down. It's the custom that's been solidified through modern day statutes.
Exactly right. Read this form, Mark Bishop.
16:1-28, saving the rights under charters granted by Great Britain, revised 1877, being section 12, and the act entitled An Act to Incorporate the Trustees of Religious Societies, approved April 9th, 1875, stayed from repeal. This section vested property held under charters of incorporation granted by Great Britain in corporation created in place thereof.
Okay, so we know that Great Britain consists of England, Ireland, and Scotland by the unification of the Treaty of Union in 1707. Prior to that, it was separate governments or administrative governments, Ireland, England, and Scotland. Under the Prescription Act of 1832, which we just read in reference to Time Immemorial, Scotland and Ireland has no interest in that. They don't. They don't fit that requirement. The only person that fit that requirement is the descendants of England. Why do they fit that prescription? Because it says the right stated under the charge of Great Britain saved from repeal. A charter is a letter pack Our letter patent is the Constitution, something that constitutes your authority to do something under the authority of Great Britain. King George gave it to the United States, means seat the United States, but the authority that was seat the United States is still here under the charge of Great Britain. And under the charge of Great Britain, the United States cannot act. The only person who can act under Great Britain is the monarch under Great Britain, which consists of England, Ireland, and Scotland. You don't see a monarch acting on behalf of the Kingdom of England. You don't see that. So one has to be incorporated to react, because it says the property held and charges in place thereof were held by corporations.
And that's
It is a religious society. It's a corporation. A corporation is a monopoly given a letter patent to hold the property, i.e. trustees. These trustees are the United States who have the possession and pledging that possession to fund their new administrative government that came from an ideological thought. So it says, I'm gonna read it again, an act to incorporate the trustees of a religious society, because all the property belonging to the religious society are in corporations in place thereof. So let's find another one. 46 7-5.
And point of interest in those trustees are officers. So it's holding a public office, i.e. an office for the king.
Yes.
Because those are the only ones who are going to be able to enforce what the king written down, or his charters or his laws, are those officers who have
Let's show them legislatively. This is what the law says. Every corporation, every monopoly, every business that you see running out today has to have a certificate of incorporation,
i.e. a charter.
A charter. And that charter is overseen by the state, because that's where you get it from. But the state is not sovereign, nor is the federal government sovereign, as a result of the contracts it's made prior to its claimed sovereignty. All right? Who has the sovereignty? I'm about to show you. Powers to consolidated corporations. Read that form, Archbishop.
Section 16:1-43.9, powers of consolidated corporation. The consolidated corporation shall have and may exercise all powers conferred by the respective certificates of incorporation or charters of the constituent corporations by Title 14, Corporations General, and by the Title 16, Corporations and Associations, Religious, and in
Stop
part.
right there. Let's go here. Let's read 8. You ask your leaders, your teachers, your YouTube, are they exercising any legislative authority in lieu of a claim, in lieu of your birthright? Ask them. Are they incorporated to do such a thing? Ask them, because we are. We're showing you our legislative authority. Read it, Archbishop.
43.8, vested rights and privileges of constituent corporations, continuation of corporate existence. Nothing herein contained shall impair, annul, or affect any vested rights, charter rights, privileges, exemptions, immunities, powers, prerogatives, franchises, or advantages heretofore obtained and actually used or enjoyed by either constituent corporation under authority of any act of the state. Neither constituent corporation shall be dissolved, nor shall its existence be terminated by reason of the consolidation, but it shall continue to exist in the consolidated corporation, which shall succeed and continue to have and enjoy unimpaired the several rights, charter rights, privileges, exemptions, immunities, powers, prerogatives, franchises, advantages, and constituent corporations, consistently with the provisions of this act and of the consolidation agreement.
Okay, so when we incorporated under laws by ancient forefathers, all the laws that existed back then are incorporated into our society, and they become valid as a result of that. Let's get another qualifying statute to sustain that. 26.
And point of interest, to bring clarity, the church itself is not incorporated. The offices, i.e. the officers, are incorporated. The church is always free.
Yeah.
And the church can only run by having officers. And the only way for them to know that the church actually exists, the officers had to reincorporate, i.e. reincarnation, so that way that the so-called operating parties today can actually see that we exist and that we have charters that predate them, which means that they have to not only protect us, but they also too have to leave us alone and leave us be according to our customary law that goes back to time immemorial 1189.
I.e. in that Magna Carta. Because
Yep.
it says the English church should be free
Free forever.
forever. You know what I'm saying? So we had to incorporate at the English Church of England, which is called the Third Temple English Church of England as the third building of the Third Temple. Because
Exactly.
people talking about the building of the Third Temple, well, here it is. All right? It ain't abstract, it's concrete.
Concrete. 43.6 effect of consolidation. When a consolidation becomes effective, the constituent corporation shall be one corporation by the name provided in the agreement, and all of the rights, charter rights, privileges, exemptions, immunities, powers, prerogatives, and franchises of each of the constituent corporations, real and personal property, wherever situated, funds, endowments, investments, legacies, remainders, estates in possession or expectancy, gifts, interests, and things in action of or belonging to the constituent corporations, whether vested, contingent, accrued, or accrue, shall be vested in and be deemed to be transferred to the consolidated corporation without further act or deed, and shall be thereafter as effectually the property of and vested in the consolidated corporation as they were of the respective constituent corporations, and the title to any real estate, whether by deed, gift, will, devise, or otherwise personal property, funds, endowments, investments, legacies, remainders, estates in possession, or expectancy, gifts, interests, and things in action under the laws of this or any other state, territory, or nation vested in, or accruing, or to accrue, or inuring to the benefit of either of the constituent corporations, shall not revert or be in any way impaired, annulled, or affected by reason of the consolidation, but shall be fully vested in and inured to the benefit of the consolidated corporation.
The church shall be free. Did you hear that?
Church shall be free, yep.
It shall be free. Continue.
All rights, all obligations and relations to any person, and all debts, liabilities, trusts, and duties of each of the constituent corporations shall remain unimpaired, and the consolidated corporation shall, by the consolidation, succeed to all such rights, obligations, relations, debts, liabilities, trusts, and duties, and shall execute and perform all of them to the same uses and purposes as nearly as may be as those upon which they were to be executed and performed by the respective constituent corporations, and they may be enforced against it to the same extent and in the same manner as though it had itself assumed the obligations, relations, or trust, or incurred the debts, liabilities, or duties.
That sounds like the Articles of Confederation to me. Continue.
All rights of creditors and all liens upon a property of the constituent corporation shall be preserved unimpaired, and the constituent corporation shall be deemed to continue in existence in order to preserve the same. No pending action or other judicial proceeding to which either the constituent corporation shall be a party shall abate or be discontinued by reason of the consolidation, but the same may be prosecuted to final judgment against the consolidated corporation.
16-1-28, right stated on charge of Great Britain safe from appeal, and act to incorporate trustee religious charge for property held in corporation place thereof. So as authority we have the right by way of our certificate of corporation, i.e. our charter, to incorporate under the laws of our ancestors did in their days. And all the power they had back then, we got it now. You know what I'm saying? To own property, because I'm gonna show you the same language in this statute.
And once again, that's the reason why they took away all of what you thought was yours, because you claimed to be something else. And the charters, i.e. the treaties, were meant for specific people, those subjects of Great Britain, i.e. the English people.
Well, I'm about to show them something.
That's why they took your gold away, because you didn't claim to be those people any longer. So they had to give you something to keep you in operation for them, as you've been chattel property, and only chattel property can use as paper money. You can't use gold and silver because you don't really exist.
Exactly. That's why they took it out of circulation. Read this form.
46:7-5, conveyances to religious societies prior to incorporation, valid after incorporation.
Now stop. This is dealing with property. We already read the right to incorporate trustees of a religious society to take the property from corporations. Now we got Title 46 dealing with the ownership of the property and the conveyance to the religious society prior to the incorporation, valid after incorporation. So as we just read in Title 16, you're reading the same language in Title 46. The right to be able to take property that was held through certificate corporations through our previous corporations that were going back to time immemorial. Read that form.
46:7-5. Conveyances to religious societies prior to incorporation valid after incorporation, where any conveyance of real estate has been made, executed, and recorded in favor of any religious society, association, or corporation of this state as the grantee therein, and such religious society, corporation, or association hath failed to record and file the proper certificate of incorporation in a manner prescribed by Title 16, corporations and associations, religious or by any law in force at the time when they in any such society, corporation, or association was incorporated or attempted to be incorporated, until after the making and the execution of such conveyance and the recording thereof, any and all such conveyances shall be as valid and effectual in law as if made, executed, and delivered to such religious society, association, or corporation after the filing and recording of the proper certificate of incorporation, and as if made to such religious society, association, or corporation during the period of its corporate existence, and the record of any such conveyance so made to any such religious society, association, or corporation prior to recording and filing of its certificate of incorporation as aforesaid, shall be of the same force and effect as if the conveyance had been made, executed, and recorded subsequent to the recording and filing of such certificate of incorporation, and shall be admissible in evidence as fully and completely for all purposes as if such conveyances have been made and recorded during the corporate existence of such association or society or corporation.
Okay, so on the 46:1 46:3-1 and 46:3-2, it said that all the tenures under land, hereditary, etc., under free and common socket, as well as they are under the subjectivity under the king, person, body politics, or corporation. All right. Now let me show you that, as we just read, we incorporated under the charters, under the statutory law that's preserved our right to incorporate under the charters of our ancestors, right? Under the right, under 61-28, as well as 46:3-1-2 and 3-2, and all the other statutes that deal with property, because the word property means ownership.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying property, you're saying ownership.
Yep.
Possession is not ownership. When you have possession of property, that don't mean you own it. You're just using it until the owner come back. All right. So let me show you this in closing of what they're trying to do, but it's too late because we already incorporated by showing you the legislation that we presented to you today. Now, this is what they're trying to do.
And that's why we say render to God what is God's and render to Caesar what is Caesar's.
And this is the reason why I filed a lawsuit against them, because they're caught in a lie. We don't know what we're talking about. Okay, I'm about to show you. And this is in closing. You see that, Archbishop?
Yep.
State of New Jersey Law Revision Commission. Now read what they say.
It
This
says,
is Title 46, y'all, property. We just read you the legislation, 2023. Just read it to you. Now look what the Law Commission is trying to do. But it's too late because we already incorporated under these laws. You're trying to appeal these laws because you claim they were subject to anachronism, meaning that they're no longer useful. But yet we incorporated under these laws as a result of our birthright. But now you're trying to get Congress to repeal these laws. It's too late. Read what it says.
New Jersey Law Revision Commission draft tentative report relating to property, July 2012. This tentative report is distributed to the advised interested persons of the commission's tentative recommendations and to notify them of the opportunity to submit comments. The commission will consider these comments before making its final recommendations to the legislator. The Commission often substantially revises tentative recommendations as a result of the comments it receives. If you approve
Okay.
of the tentative,
All right there. So in 2012, they created a tentative report in regards to subject matter in regards to Title 46 and changing the language to an amended language of Title 46 to suit their agenda. You don't believe me? Let's read it. Read that.
property, in the introduction, this is a revision of the basic statutory law of property. The provisions included are those now in Title 46, chapters 3, 3A, 4, 5, 6, and 7. As a result of additions made over the years, the provisions in these chapters follow no particular order and have become a mixture of a variety of subjects. The table of dispositions included lists all of the current sections and indicates which of the new sections continues the substance of each. This draft includes versions of the parts of the law that have continuing significance. These have been revised by modernization of language and approach. See, for example, chapters 4 and 5 on the form of deeds. There are a great many provisions of the current law that have been deleted from this draft. The table of dispositions indicates that these sections have been deleted. It was our judgment that these sections are unnecessary. Many are clearly anachronistic. They cover matters no longer relevant.
Stop. Stop. So they're saying Title 46 is being revised because the language prior to the revisation are no longer considered applicable. All right. But yeah, we incorporated under these laws. And they said that it was subject to anachronistic, which means that they're no longer relevant. So they're saying the law of the Great Britain and the law pertaining to the property of Great Britain is no longer relevant. Who has the authority to say such a thing? English people have the right to say that. Americans have the right to say that because they're the ones who function right now. But as you can see, these laws were already here before America got even started. All right, we just went over and read the laws to you in regards under the legislation, in regards to the preservation of the states of those laws subject to that of Great Britain. New Jersey by Statutes 16-1-28, 46-3-1 and 2. Now let's show you that they try to revise these laws. Right here. So as you can see, we just read these. 46-3-1, dealing with all tickets from March 12, 1664 are abolished. They're trying to do away with that. 3-2, dealing with King of England body politics, they're saying they are unnecessary. Why? Because there ain't no king. All these laws you see here, we incorporated under. So you can't dissolve them. You can't appeal them. Why? Because they're implicable. They're unappealable. 61-28 says you can't appeal the laws governing the property of England, which falls under Title 46. But there are no trustees in lieu of 61-28 to take the position of Title 46, to take the position to make claims under Title 46, 3-1 and 2, 6, 10, and whatever other statute that relevant to Great Britain and parliaments and laws governing the state for its successors, i.e. the beneficiary. So there you have it, y'all. Our law is here, it's preserved. The uses and the customs to regain our state and to preserve our state so it can't be touched on false pretenses, it's preserved. Those who don't understand that, then that means whatever you possess can be taken because you didn't really own it in the first place. So with that, I digress, and I leave all closing remarks to Archbishop.
Once again, well done, King, in bringing this lesson to the forefront for that the heirs as well as the world as a whole can see what it is that you were called to do in regards to not only saving the lost English people and descendants of Great Britain, but our vast estate, which is still here underneath our feet. many brothers and sisters have come to try to bring some form of teachings to the world or to us, but those teachings have all pretty much went to the wayside because they were not grounded in concrete proof. They didn't have true evidence that, we can use for our salvation compared to which we have been showing here time and time again here at the Third Temple English Church. So what this is being done is showing that, anything and everything that we want to do can be done, but you have to come back into the proper state of mind and be those people who was actually taken away from, and no longer be those contradictions or legal fictions that only going to place you into another reality outside of your true world, where you can actually live and feel like the descendants of the kings of England, going back to time immemorial. So once again, we keep calling. We got the horns going. They're showing within their waking reality that you can no longer live this ideology that they created for you, because what it's doing is putting you in a position of not only stagnation, but anguish. And that anguish is going to lead to more sorrow as time goes on. They don't have any real money. You haven't been paid any real money since so-called 1933. And as we see, if you continue to keep playing this game of Monopoly with them, you're going to lose, because the way that they set it up is for them to be the winners until the true inheritors, i.e. the king, return to claim what is actually truly his. And if you are shown with your deeds and actions time and time and again, even with the presenting of the court cases that are still going on. So once again, my allegiance is to my king as well as to my queen, as well to the Third Temple English Church of England, as well as to our people within the Kingdom of England, Great Britain, who are scattered amongst the four corners of the world. And like we said, each to his own, many are called, few are chosen. So we have brought it concrete proof with the evidence that you cannot dispute, even if you try to with your eyes closed. So
let me just read something to him right quick, Archbishop. I'm sure it's in their broker real estate book about how our state became interstate. Right quick. It's called Alienation of the State.
And it's funny because the treaty told them we couldn't be alienated.
20, this is section 20. Transfer of title. It says right here. Title to real estate means the right or ownership of the land. A parcel of real estate may be transferred from one owner to another by a living, or it may be transferred by will or a descent after a person has died. In every instance, however, alienation, the transfer of title to a parcel of real estate, is a complex legal proceeding involving a number of laws of documents. Alienation of title and alienation. First, you got, when a person dies, it's called interstate. If there's no will, then it automatically falls into what they call a street, which falls, it means that the acting sovereign power authority claims the property. Once that's done, it's taken by either private possession or public possession, which is called public land use. Once that's done, it's fall under the eminent domain power of the state, which allows them to use the property for public use, long as consideration is given. As a result of that, it falls under the jurisdiction of the government agencies created by the state. When that's done, the property is lent out. And when it's lent out, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, they make money off that. And if you don't pay your taxes or they pay for the encumbrances, the liens, what they call the city code, etc., foreclosure. Once foreclosure, it falls under what they call a sheriff's sale. When it falls under the sheriff's sale, it's open to what they call adverse possession, which is open, notorious, continuous, hostile, and adverse use of another's property for a prescriptive period. We talked about that, prescriptive, right? Which is called adverse possession, Yeah, called adverse possession. And adverse possession is used for another property by way of what we call sovereign prescription. I'm just pull that up right quick, and then we'll close out, Archbishop. Prescription by sovereignty. There we go. Everybody better pay attention. If they're not teaching you this in your schools of thought, then you're in the wrong school of thought. Read that to him, Archbishop.
Prescription sovereignty transfer. Prescription in international law is sovereignty transfer of a territory by the open encroachment by the new sovereign upon a territory for a prolonged period of time, acting as the sovereign without protest or other contest by the original sovereign. It is analogous to the common law doctrine of easement by prescription for private real estate.
Okay, there you have it. That's what's going on. Somebody claiming the sovereign. The United States ain't sovereign because they be sued on torts. The states ain't sovereign because they can be sued by torts. Our sovereign is sovereign. That's what you call sovereign immunity, or what we call crown immunity, because only the crown is sovereign. So a prescription under international law is based off sovereign transfer of real estate that don't belong to them. So all those who claim to have international treaties, you're just stealing somebody else's land. That's all you're doing under what they call easement by prescription. What is easement by prescription? Let's read that. We already read it. Easement is a non-possessory right to use or enter into real property. What's non-possessory? Read that for him, Archbishop.
Non-possessory interest in land. A non-possessory interest in land is a term of the law of property to describe any of a category of rights held by one person to use land that is in the possession of another. Such rights can generally be created in one of two ways, either by an express agreement between the two party who owns the land and the party who seeks to own the interest, or by an order of a court. Under the common law, there are 5 variations of such rights. These are easements, profits, restrictive covenants, equitable servitudes, and licenses.
So in order for you to sell or buy land, you need a what? A license, right? And that falls under what they call easement, because you don't own what it is you buying and selling. The only thing you're interested in is the profits. And that's called wealth profit. Not real wealth, but paper wealth. Because the only thing you're getting out of it is the funny money. You don't own the property, you just buying and selling it, which means it's a restricted covenant. It means it's restricted. It has encompasses, it has limitations. Why? Because it's subject to equitable servitude, which results in what they call right of reversion, remandement to the real owner when you connect the chain of title, and the chain of title is the crown. And with that, King and Archbishop is going to say, peace.
Peace.
Talk to you soon. There.